Good evening. It's January 19th, Tuesday. We're here for our second regularly scheduled Brattleboro Selectboard meeting of January 2016. We convened the regular meeting at 5:30 and went into executive session. I want to start by greeting everybody who's watching us on TV, and I want to welcome everybody who's here in attendance at tonight's meeting. I want to thank our ASL interpreters and our BCTV operators and members of the press. The first item on tonight's public meeting agenda will be to approve the minutes from January 5. But before we do that, we need to rearrange one item on the agenda with the board's permission. Steve Horton will be here for discussion of the police fire facilities project, which is number B under unfinished business. And he also has been working with the town as owner's representative with respect to the transportation center stairs. So unless there's any objection, we will move transportation center stairs to follow police fire facilities project. Is that okay with everybody on the board?
Yes.
Anybody have any concerns about that who's in attendance? All right then. With that change, the first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the January 5th meeting. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from January 5th as presented. Any discussion or any comments or edits from anybody on the board? From anybody who's in attendance? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from January 5, 2016 as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next matter on the agenda is chair's remarks. What I'll note is that we have met as a select board every week since the beginning of November. During that time period, which probably spans 12 or 15 meetings over the course of 3 months, we have considered and finalized the land use regulations. We have gone through a substantial amount of work relating to the police fire facilities renovation project. And we've also had, I think, 5 or 6 meetings now about the budget, along with all the other business of the town. We have a very long agenda tonight, but it's going to see us drawing to a close the budget discussion and probably moving close to finishing our recommendations about police fire facilities as well. I know that beginning at the beginning of February, it's our intention to go back to twice monthly meetings instead of meeting every week. I know I've enjoyed working with all of you intensely every week, but I'll be happy to have every other week meetings as well. I'll also note that the deadline for submission of petitions for town-wide and district-wide positions is, I think, January 25th. Is that right, Annette? So anybody who's interested in holding an elected position in the town, including select board, school board, school board, and town meeting representative, petitions full of signatures are due next Monday at 5 o'clock. And we encourage everybody to participate in the life of the town in whatever means they feel most comfortable. Next matter on the agenda is town manager's comments.
And given the length of the agenda this evening, I'll pass. Thank you.
Anything for select board comments or committee reports?
I went to the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District meeting, and with some people abstaining and voting against the budget was passed. There is still some, and David, you may have to check into that. There's still some reservations about the solar array up there, so you may have to check into that, because I didn't get a chance to follow up on it. But So,
And the Finance Committee made a recommendation, which I think the board approved, for the members of the committee to look at the fee structure and the
Right.
assessment
Yep.
structure. So we're moving along. I think we've got a memo, and Patrick and I spoke a little bit today, and we're going to sit down with some interested
well, yeah, there was,
figure out how to proceed.
there was a little lengthy
Good schedule.
discussion about that too. I don't know if you've talked to about who was going to be on that board.
Yeah, the Finance Committee took a long time talking about it.
Yeah, okay, so did they finally finalize it, or?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes, they have.
They have? Now, because Peter, I think your name came up. I don't know if,
The board has made, we've got our two representatives
Right.
in Dave and Patrick, and then the board has their board has taken action on the other three members of the committee, so
And I volunteered
it's
John
ready
to
to
be
go.
always available to us. It's in the minutes.
okay.
Good choice.
Excellent, so maybe we'll see some progress from the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District over the course of the next 6 months. Can only hope.
Quite a bit of progress over the last 6.
Can only hope.
Ways to go.
Any other select board comments or committee reports? Next matter on the agenda is public participation. If there's anybody who wants to speak to anything that's not on tonight's agenda, this would be a good time.
Tim?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to pass on some good news. Project Feed has gone over its goal for the year. $117,000 in cash, 207,000 meals. Thank you to all contributors, including, again, just a great job by Brattleboro Town employees. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tim.
Fantastic.
Anybody else who wants to speak to anything that's not on the agenda? Next item on the agenda is a series of requests for special event permits under liquor commissioners. So do we have a motion to convene as liquor commissioners?
So moved.
We have a motion to convene as liquor commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. If opposed or abstaining, that carries 5-0. Ms. Bonin, do you want to talk to us about the Brattleboro Love Crawl?
Thank you. Stephanie Bonin. I am on the board of the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance and also the owner of Duo Restaurant. The Downtown Brattleboro Alliance has a goal, a mission to bring people to downtown Brattleboro. And so under this mission, we have created our February promotion, which is the Brattleboro Love Crawl, a play on a pub crawl, but we've paired 13 shops with 13 local distillers, brewers, food artisans, and winemakers. And so the idea is that the participants will come to a designated location, buy a ticket for $5, get ID'd, be given an ID bracelet, and then head off to the different shops. With the vision of them having a great time, a good event, and also getting them into the stores and seeing what amazing stores we have downtown. With Valentine's Day in mind, an excuse to buy gifts.
Hence, Love Crawl.
Yes. And it is Thursday, February 11th, so that you all have enough time to come on the Love Crawl and then go back the next day and get the surprise gift for your Valentine.
Oh, good plan.
Tell Kathy that, would you please?
And everybody gets Friday off.
Anybody on the board have any questions or comments?
That's a good idea.
Peter, if you could just briefly, once again, talk to us about the review of the application
Sure.
and the department's positions.
Yep. So I would note two things. The standard one, that the application has been reviewed by all the applicable town staff, and as reflected in the backup, has been approved by the police department and the fire department. So we recommend your approval. In addition to that, I want to thank Stephanie and everybody else who was involved in this particular application. This was more complex than many of the ones that you see because of the size of the event and the number of participants. But we identified the process that we needed to follow and the deadline by which we needed all the paperwork, and it was all there on time and easy for us to review and approve. So we recommend that you do approve it so the event can proceed.
Thank you for making it so easy for it to be approved and reviewed. Anybody in attendance have any questions or comments?
Could I add just one thing?
Yeah?
That I forgot to say is that we set a goal of having 8 stores involved in the event, and we ended up with 13 stores involved. And they did have to pay to participate, so I think that's a huge achievement and sign.
So was that because they came to you and wanted to?
No, we went to them.
You went to them, okay.
Actively,
No, that's good, though.
Yeah.
They wanted to at least,
yes.
Are there some going into 2 stores now? We have 9.
What you ask?
Oh, are there, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, are there
No,
more?
so I'm saying 13 stores because there are food artisans involved,
Oh,
and those
okay.
people don't need the special
Oh,
permits.
perfect, okay. Thank you.
And also one of them is at Duo in a pop-up shop in the back, not supporting my business, we're letting them use the space, and so thus we already have a liquor license.
Any other questions or comments from anybody on the board? Is anybody in attendance? I move to approve special event permits for February 11, 2016, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. for Saxon's River Distillery at Altiplano, 42 Elliott Street, Whetstone Cider Works, LLC, at Brattleboro Bicycle Shop, 165 Main Street, American Crafted Spirits, Inc., DBA Silo Distillery, at Candle in the Night, 181 Main Street, Stonecutter Spirits, at Beatniks, 115 Main Street, Whetstone Station Restaurant at Burroughs, 105 Main Street, Caledonia Spirits at Renaissance Jewelers, 151 Main Street, Charles Dodge, DBA Putney Winery, LLP, at Argracious 1, 57 Elliott Street, Vermont Distillers, Inc., at In the Moment Records, 143 Main Street, Cold Spring Spirits, LLC, doing business as Mad River Distillers, at Taylor for Flowers, 15 Elliott Street. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other business to come in front of liquor commissioners? Hearing none. We are looking for a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next matter on the agenda is to convene as water and sewer commissioners. Do we have a motion?
so moved.
We have a motion to convene as water and sewer commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? It carries 5-0. Mr. Barrett, how are you this evening?
Good, thank you. Steve Barrett, Director of Public Works.
The first matter on the water and sewer commissioners' agenda is shaftless screw and conveyor liner wastewater treatment plant replacement.
Little less glamorous than the last subject.
Yeah, well.
What I'm here tonight is to request approval for purchase of a conveyor and what they call a screw system. This is the first line of treatment at the wastewater treatment plant. It was installed in 2012, and, you know, I guess probably your reaction would be the same as mine.
Why is
when
it
I first,
broken?
why this is a brand-new plant, why would we have to replace something so soon? But when you look at the facility, this is the front line piece of equipment that takes all the heavy abrasives, the rags, and all the material that comes into the sewer, from the sewer system into the treatment plant. It operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And each year it processes over 400 million gallons of wastewater. So it's a lot of waste that's going through here. In addition to that, we took in 2 million gallons of septic, and that came from septic haulers pumping tanks in the region, in Windham County, Brattleboro residents, but also other residents in the county. So that's one of the reasons there's a lot of demand on this, and this piece of equipment is very important because it takes all this material out and protects the rest of the treatment system itself. Downstream of this, you have continued treatment processes, motors and pumps, and this system takes the heavy, it's the big hitter, takes all these heavy materials out of the wastewater before it goes through the primary and then the secondary treatment process. So the cost of this is $22,574. The Custom Conveyor Corporation is the company that makes this particular product. I can tell you that we will continue to look at alternative methods because, you know, in a way, we would like to see at least 5 years out of a piece of equipment. But breaking it down into dollars, it was kind of interesting. I looked at it. We brought in $160,000 in septic receiving alone, and that's $438 a day on an average. And the conveyor, if you break down the cost of its lifespan, its cost is $20.61 a day. So in reality, the piece of equipment really has paid for itself, although it's shocking to have to replace it, and, you know, it was only put in 2012.
Well, Steve, can you, I mean, is this going to happen every 2 or 3 years?
Well,
or
that's-
3 or 4 years?
I would suspect if we have the same amount of
Yeah.
equipment, this is going to be, part of the operation. But again, you know, there's evidence to show that the equipment is effective.
Right.
And also there's a payback on this equipment, you know, directly just with septic receiving alone.
Before our new plant was built, we still had the same system, right?
We had
A
a different.
system like it.
We had a different type of, we had actually a system that used to shred a lot of the material. And in this process, we had a system, one that was a shredder and one that was very similar to this that took out the heavies, out of all the materials that fall, the heavy sands and stuff. And both those were expensive and pretty heavy maintenance, or, you know, had a pretty high replacement value also.
Did we consult with the engineer or the manufacturer?
Yes, we have.
In order to determine whether 3 years is the expected lifespan?
Yeah, and the interesting thing with that is every wastewater treatment plant has different types of waste. So there's no cookie cutter answer to that question other than, yeah, that was reasonable for the amount of time that you received with this piece of equipment. But again, in Brattleboro, we deal with commercial, industrial waste, and also residential, and again, the septic. So you take all those factors in, we're dealing with a multiple waste stream, which can contribute to the wear on this piece of equipment.
And going forward, we'll build this into the utilities budget as a item like every 3 years?
Yes, I would like to, what I would recommend is putting it into the capital and coming up with a replacement like we do with other pieces of equipment. I think because this is our first experience with this and the unknowns, you know, we didn't really anticipate this.
Are there other methods out there?
There's all different types of methods, but that's something that we're going to continue to look at.
Yeah.
To see if, we've looked to see if they have alternative type screens that are more industrial, if you will. And we're going to do a cost analysis on that to see if there may be better alternatives.
Any other questions from anybody on the board? Anybody who's in attendance have any questions?
I move we approve the quote from Custom Conveyor Corporation for $22,574 to replace the necessary equipment at the wastewater treatment plant.
Is there any further discussion? We have a motion to accept Custom Conveyor Corporation's price quote and to purchase that equipment. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0.
Thank you.
So the next matter on the agenda, under Water and Sewer Commissioners, has to do with the Black Mountain Gravity Sewer System. Do you want to begin? Or Peter, do you want to? You want me to?
Yeah, why don't you summarize?
Okay.
What you think ought to be summarized, and we can chime in if we need to.
Very good. We have in front of the board a request to authorize a sum not to exceed $200,000 for additional construction phase engineering services for the gravity-fed sewer line coming from Black Mountain Road. To refresh everybody's recollection, over the course of the time that we were planning and then executing the rebuild of the wastewater treatment plant, it came to our attention that it might be more cost-effective to have a gravity-fed sewer line coming from Black Mountain Road rather than pump station where we would have to pay for replacement of parts at the pump station and for ongoing electrical expenses to maintain that station and to operate that station. And we entered into a contract with Kingsbury Construction for like $900,000?
Just shy of $900,000.
Just shy of $900,000 to build the gravity-fed sewer line. And part of that cost, if I recall correctly, was about $80,000 for engineering services to Hoyle and Tanner Associates, $79,800. There have been some references in our public meetings to difficulties that have been experienced with construction of the Black Mountain gravity-fed sewer line. And we actually had discussion during town manager's comments last meeting or the meeting before about the fact that those difficulties with execution of the contract had reached a point where we might need to at least consider terminating the contract, and we had given notice of that potential, which is a relatively unprecedented step in the construction industry. There's been a lot of work in which the town has engaged through the town manager and town manager's office and the Public Works Department and the Utilities Department in an effort to bring the construction of the Black Mountain gravity-fed sewer line to a successful completion and to avoid, if possible, termination of the contract and litigation, because our goal is to get it working well. There are essentially two different parts of the Black Mountain gravity-fed sewer line with which we've had different difficulties. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of what those problems are because we're still negotiating about efforts to try to fix that. But there is one part of the project that involves a drilled line that runs from west to east under I-91 right near the Black Mountain Bridge, the Black Mountain Road Bridge. And that directional sewer line, directionally drilled sewer line, does not currently, as built, meet our specifications. And we're in negotiations to see whether that can be addressed satisfactorily to the town. In addition, there's a connector from that directionally drilled sewer line to the Brattleboro mains, which is a separate piece of the project, which also does not currently meet specifications. We're in negotiations trying to address those issues. Each of those two are going to be addressed differently during our ongoing negotiations. But in order for us to be able to proceed forward with the work we're doing to try to get the Black Mountain gravity-fed sewer line completed, or at least get through this negotiation phase, we need to continue working with our engineers, Hoyle, Tanner and Associates. And thus far, the work just to get us to this point in the evaluation of the work that's been done and to at least scoping out potential remedies has been about $100,000 worth of work that Hoyle Tanner has done without getting paid. And we reasonably anticipate at least 4 or 5 more months worth of work by Hoyle Tanner at the same general rate to about another $100,000 worth of work. So at this point, in order for us to proceed forward with trying to get this project to some sort of closure, whatever that may be, we need to authorize $200,000 worth of work for Hoyle Tanner, half of which has already been expended, half of which would be expended going forward. What I'll note is that we had hoped to save quite a bit of money in the short term and the long term by doing the gravity-fed sewer line. Our best laid plans are running into interference, and it is difficult to know at this point exactly what it's going to wind up costing, other than to say that we're going to be working as diligently as possible and with the best information that's available to try and bring the project to a successful close for the least dollars possible. But right now, we need to look at this $200,000 additional expenditure. Now, that's much more detailed information in broader context than really has been put into public record before. It is summarized in that memo that Steve prepared, that was in the binder. And I think that pretty much my comments just synthesize what was already in the record. Steve, thank you for preparing this and making it available to everybody. If there are other questions, I can try to answer them, or Peter or Steve can try to answer them, but pretty much our response is going to be within the scope of what's in the memo, which is what's in the public record, given the potential for dispute and litigation. There will be things that we won't be able to talk about.
I'd like to
Peter, please go
add
ahead.
one quick clarification to the two different components of the job that you described. We do believe that an engineered solution to the lower part of the job, down in the area of the VFW and that part of Black Mountain Road, is possible, as Steve laid out in his memorandum. That's not been explicitly identified yet. There's still work to be done there, which is part of what this engagement would be. But we're confident that there can be an engineered solution down below. The second portion of it, the upper portion that you described that was directionally drilled, is where we think that it's more likely to be a negotiated settlement of this in order to bring the project and the contract to a successful end. And in the negotiation process, we would seek to recover at least a portion of these fees that you'd be authorizing tonight. But in order to proceed and beyond that dual path towards what we hope to be a successful conclusion to the project, we will need Hoyle Tanner as our engineer and partner. So we'd ask for your approval of the recommendation.
Anybody on the board got any questions or comments about any of this? Anybody? I mean, I will note that, obviously, given the tenor of this matter, this is one of these things that's been the subject of discussions in executive session. I don't usually identify the specific topics that we talk about in executive session, because even identifying the topics often would raise an issue about confidentiality of that information and create risk of prejudice and harm to the town by general public knowledge beforehand. But given the scope of the report that we've just provided, to have a discussion in executive session about this topic. Anybody who's in attendance have any questions about any of this? I guess we're ready for motion.
Motion to extend the agreement with Hoyle Tanner Associates until completion of the project at an estimated cost not to exceed $200,000 for additional construction phase engineering services.
We have a motion to approve $200,000, the sum not to exceed $200,000 to pay Hoyle Tanner for services rendered to date and additional services moving forward. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Any other business to come in front of Water and Sewer Commissioners? Hearing none, we're ready for motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next matter on the agenda is the FY17 budget. Plan is to approve the budget, to recommend it to the representative town meeting. Peter, would you summarize, please?
Sure. We met 8 times between November 10th and January 12th to review various aspects of the budget. And during the course of those meetings, there were numerous changes considered and several changes approved. Those are outlined on the first page of a memorandum dated January 14th that's in your backup this evening, where there are specifically a reduction in the assessment paid to the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District, a reduction in the transfer to solid waste because of the approval of reducing frequency of curbside garbage collection to once every 2 weeks, a reduction in the heating oil line items throughout the various departments, and also the electricity line items throughout the various departments, and finally a small decrease in the municipal center telephone line item. Total of those expenditure reductions is $155,150. Likewise, there is a net reduction in the revenue side because it's a balanced budget. So there's a $155,150 reduction in the total revenues. And the way that's arrived at is a reduction in property taxes of $289,375 from what was proposed. I need to stress that these are changes from what was originally proposed on November 3rd, not changes from the existing FY16 budget. But approximately $290,000 lower property taxes than what I had originally proposed to you back on November 3rd, offset by your approval to use 1/2 of the available fund balance that is in excess of our 10% standard in that regard. So that's $134,225, netting to the $155,150. So where that leaves us, based on all the different details that you reviewed during the 8 meetings and your tentative approval of this budget in our last discussion, is ready this evening, unless you have any additional questions or concerns at this time, to approve the budget that is attached to this memorandum and set forth on 19 detailed pages of line items in the materials for this evening's meeting. The overall impact both for revenues and expenditures of that FY17 budget that you would be proposing for town meeting approval, as it compares to the FY16 adopted budget and the FY15 adopted budget, is set forth on page 2 of my memorandum. Overall, the property taxes are proposed to increase by about 1.5%, and total revenues and total expenditures are proposed to increase by approximately 3.7%. Any questions?
Anybody on the board have any questions at this point? Or any comments?
No, I'm still confused. Did we vote last week on the splitting up the money?
You did.
We did?
We did.
Yeah, you adopted a motion to,
We're here so often that I just wanted to make sure.
Talked about it so many times, it's hard to know we made
I
a
know,
decision.
but we did vote on it.
you did vote on
Yeah,
using
okay.
half of it this year and half of it next year.
How can you forget that we made a decision?
Wow, we haven't made a lot.
And the impact of that is the property tax rate increase
Right.
from the current to what is proposed for FY17 would be 1.82 cents.
Yep.
That's 1.82 cents before any increase for police fire.
That's correct. This is for the operating budget, operating to operating, before any additional debt service for that separate decision that you will make potentially this evening as part of this agenda, and then town meeting would make as a separate matter at the special town meeting tentatively scheduled for March 12th.
Well,
So by the time we get to March 19th and the regular annual representative town meeting, your recommendation and the decision of town meeting will be known regarding police fire, and the impact of that decision can be incorporated into the budget at the March 19th town meeting.
Anybody on the board have anything to speak to about this? In broadest perspective, this budget provides essentially level service from last year to this year. It provides for a 2% increase in wages for all employees, although we are going to be involved in labor negotiations, collective bargaining agreement negotiations over the course of the next year, year and a half. It provides for other increases in costs that we can't control. For example, insurance premiums, health insurance, and related matters. It provides for one significant service cut, which is a reduction in garbage collection from every week to every other week, although we will continue collection of compost and recycling every week. So we've looked each of the 5 years I've been on the board at what types of service cuts might be available. Here's a service cut that we're adopting that's been made possible by virtue of our transition to pay-as-you-throw. That's the one real service cut that we're looking at this year. As I understand it, if we were to adopt and approve the police fire option, which is to put the addition on Central Station, to build a new West Brattleboro station, and to buy the Black Mountain Road property and put the police station up there, we would be looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, a 1.5 cent additional increase from 2016 to 2017. So this budget provides a 1.8 cent increase. And if we were to go with the police fire alternative, which is likely to be recommended, we would be looking at a 3.3 cent increase this year. Peter's going to double check that, but that's my understanding. And then
Yes, that's right. That's
for
right.
the next year, were we to adopt that same alternative or do that Black Mountain Road and both fire station alternatives, the increase from the police fire alone the following year would be 4.6 cents, although we've reserved half of the surplus of $134,000, which would take that down closer to 3.5 cents in that first year of the largest amount of both bonds. So that's the budget that we're considering for approval tonight. Anybody on the board have any questions or comments about any of that?
May I just
Peter,
add
yeah.
one thing? In that overall perspective that you provided, all of which was very accurate, there's two additional points I think that are worth making. One is that we're making a substantially increased commitment to capital through this budget, particularly capital projects. We're actually not increasing, we're decreasing our expenditures for capital equipment, but we're not borrowing anything this year. So we're taking the initial steps towards being on a regular replacement program for equipment using cash rather than borrowing for that purpose. But importantly, we're investing substantially in additional capital projects, catching up on some of the infrastructure needs of the town. And the other point I wanted to make is that the non-staff departmental expenses. So you mentioned about some pay and benefit implications of what's recommended in this budget. There are increases there. But for all of the operating costs that are controlled by the department heads in the daily operations of their departments, that are the non-personnel costs but related to the things that they buy and the services that they buy in order to get the work of each department successfully completed. This budget is actually close to level but slightly reduced as compared to last year, which was already a pretty spare budget for those purposes. So I know we talked about that in some detail as we went through department by department, but I thought while we're summarizing, it'd be worth stating again.
I'm just going to note that, particularly in connection with the police fire project that we're contemplating, we're going to continue to be under significant pressure to try to find ways to reduce the budget going forward. Ms. Sondag used to say that it's not fair to do a big capital project and to then try to save money off the operating budget. But I think all the expenses of the town need to be looked at as a whole, and with a potential 3.3 cent increase this year, followed by 4 or 5 or 6 cents next year if we're doing the police fire, to these specifications, we're going to have to continue to look for ways to save money on the operations of the town as a whole, because it's a significant tax increase. Is there anybody who's in attendance who's got anything to say about the budget? Anybody else on the board who's got something to say about the budget? Well,
It looks good.
I move to approve the FY '17 budget as presented, with total expenditures and revenue of $16,111,352. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And then I move to, well, is this the ballot, is this the warning item? This is worded as the warning item. That's correct?
Yes, as preliminary, not for final wording, but to just show how it will be worded when it's brought to you as part of the overall wording.
All right, so I guess that it's not a motion for tonight.
I think we were hoping to receive direction from you that this is acceptable, that you want this placed on the warning in this form, so that when we bring you the full warning a week from last night, it would include this
All right.
item.
So I guess that I also move that the select board recommend to town meeting that we appropriate $449,225 from the unassigned general fund balance as of June 30, 2015 to fund $150,000 for the Bonnevale Road retaining wall, $165,000 for repair and refurbishment of the Living Memorial Park swimming pool, and $134,225 to reduce the tax levy for 2017. That does the trick?
That does the trick. And all of those items are in the budget, but because they are explicitly the items to be funded by the use of fund balance, they need a separate article at town meeting.
Is there any discussion about that use of fund balance?
Nope.
Anybody who's in attendance have any questions about that use of fund balance? Hearing none, all those in favor of the select board making that recommendation to town meeting, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0.
We're making decisions now.
I'm telling you. We're having a meeting next week. Bummer.
We don't need to.
I don't see Mr. Horton.
I know.
Moving right along.
Well, we're going to move on to police fire. The next item on the agenda is police fire facilities project. So the first item we're going to address is the final results of the questionnaire. So here's the questionnaire results for the board. We have extra copies for members of the press or for anybody else who might want to look. So we took a step into the modern digital era and solicited comments from members of the public through SurveyMonkey. Peter, you want to summarize the results?
Certainly. We received 505 online responses. A couple of interesting observations. We were pleased with that participation, especially for our first time out. So I've heard mixed feedback from people who have made observations, both that seems like a lot of people and very positive in terms of the breadth of the input that it provides. I've also heard people relate the 505 to if that were voter turnout, it wouldn't be such a high percentage. It would be disappointing, and I can't disagree with either one of those things, actually. If this were actual voter turnout for a referendum,
Be disappointed.
we'd be disappointed.
Right.
But it wasn't that.
Right.
It was instead our first foray into SurveyMonkey. And we got a lot of participation very quickly. One of the lessons we learned was, and we had heard this from other people who've used the tool, that you get a lot of, as long as you've done some decent publicity around the opening of the survey, you'll get a lot of participation in a hurry at the beginning, and then it'll trail off very quickly. We also heard that because of that, once you get a few days into it, your results are pretty well set. It's not likely to change much as time goes on. We found that both of those things were true. So we had, in the first 3 days of the time that this was out, it was out there for almost 2 weeks. And during the first 3 days, we had 60% of the participation that occurred during the entire period. The other thing was that because we're putting a toe in the water here, I believe we will make good use of this tool again in the future. But because we were a little uncertain as to exactly how it would go, and we wanted to make sure that everybody in the community had an opportunity to participate, we did promote pretty heavily the option that people could come in and get a paper copy or print off a paper copy and fill it out the old-fashioned way and bring it to us here at the Municipal Center. We had 18 people who chose to do that. So total responses, 523 with 505 online and 18 by paper. And if it's all right with you, I'll just go through and read the results as I did last week with the preliminaries. Our final results are 77% in favor of the full scope of the recommended improvements at the Central Fire Station, 23% opposed. On the question of the potential of doing additional work at the Central Fire Station that would provide either an additional story right now or the structural elements necessary to support an additional story in the future, 40% supported doing an additional story right now, 29% supported doing the additional structural work necessary for a future addition, and 31% were opposed to including any funding for that work at this time. On the question of whether to do the minimum prudent solution at the Central Fire Station instead of the full scope improvements, almost a mirror image of the initial question, which is what you expect to see from that probably, and that's 77% in favor, 77% opposed to doing the partial improvements and 23% in favor of that alternative. At the West Brattleboro Fire Station, the recommendation for full scope replacement of that fire station for $1.5 million, 75% of the respondents favor that and 25% are opposed. And on the alternative of doing just the remedial work necessary there for now at the West Brattleboro Fire Station, 22% in favor and 78% opposed. The question regarding the potential relocation of the police department to Black Mountain Road, 55% in favor and 45% opposed. And on the alternative of instead doing a full-scale renovation of the municipal center, the portion of the municipal center in which the police department is located, and an addition on the western side of the building, there were 33% in favor and 67% opposed. Regarding the question of potentially doing just part of the improvements now, the minimum prudent plan for the police department here at the municipal center, 24% in favor and 76% opposed. And on the question of whether to complete the police and fire improvements together or whether to break them into phases, 74% in favor of doing them together and 26% in favor of breaking into phases. The final substantive question in the survey was to pick from among four choices, either to renovate and expand Central Fire Station, replace West Brattleboro Fire Station, and move the police department to Black Mountain Road. That received 48%. The alternative for renovating, expanding Central Fire, replacing West Brattleboro Fire, and doing full-scale replacement at the Municipal Center for the Police Department received 22%. The alternative to do the less extensive minimum prudent option for all three facilities received 16%, and some other combination of alternatives received 14%. And then there's the only remaining question was the optional question of people putting in identifying information, which some chose to do and others did not.
Thank you, Peter. So I will just clarify that our goal was to gather public input in a more inclusive way than we had been able to do through convening meetings. We're certainly not bound by the information in the poll. There are the potential for some flaws in its methodology, but it's a useful tool, and we want to thank everybody who participated. It's very useful information. Anybody have any questions or comments about the poll results? On the board?
Well, it's
Anybody who's in attendance?
Still
Kate?
50/50, which I think is interesting.
All right. All right.
It's 50/50.
I know, you keep pointing that out to me.
Well, it's not totally 50/50.
It's not.
I mean,
I have a question
ahead,
about
yeah.
that, because I heard you say that last week, and I'm
If-
not
Well, she's
sure.
adding them up.
If you go to the last question, which
Right.
we say here are 4 alternatives, moving,
Doing the whole thing.
doing Central Fire, doing West Beat, and moving to Black Mountain Road gets 48.45%. The next one is staying, do Central Fire, do West Brattleboro, and keep the municipal center here, or the police department here is 22%. The next question is undertake a lower, not as big improvements at the police or the fire. That's 16%. So those people are saying don't move to Black Mountain Road and don't do a big thing on the fire.
So you're just saying that about the last page?
Well,
the
because
final
it's
count.
saying, what the last page is saying is, do you want to stay,
Right.
do it all, stay here. One of them says stay here. One of them says do something smaller than doing Central Fire or moving to Putney Road. And then the third one is a combination of something else. So 48% of the people polled said definitely let's do the full scale thing. The other, actually 51.55% said, I'm not sure I want to do the full scale. Do you see what I mean?
I
So-
do.
But it's
So-
still, I don't think you can break it down into 50/50.
No, what I'm saying is there's not.
Right. An overwhelming.
Right, to me,
Right.
it's 50% of the people say something other than move to Black Mountain Road. 50% of the people say move
I
to
hear
Black
that.
Mountain Road. The other 50% aren't solid to move to Black Mountain Road. That's why I keep saying 50/50, and I wish it was something.
But as David said, one of the problems, there are flaws with the poll, and one
Oh,
of the
that's
things
right.
you don't want to do is provide 4 options when you want to get
Right.
a yes or no kind of an answer. So,
Right.
I mean, we really, you can't, if the question was, do you want to do all 3 together, or do you want some alternative, that might come out similarly 50/50.
Right.
If it were this or this, it might come out significantly
Right.
different. When you give people all those options, they
Yeah.
choose all those options. And we
Right.
don't know
That-
what second choice.
That's right, and that's why you do the final, I only do this because I do political polls. You ask certain things, and at the end, you ask the same question, but in a different way, to see how they...
If you get a
they-
different
Yeah,
answer.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
After you've asked all these questions, and then you do this. So that's why I keep saying 50/50, and I almost wish it wasn't 50/50.
Now you're not gonna
But
change your mind
50% of the
anyways.
people say definitely go to Black Mountain Road. The other 50% aren't sure going to Black Mountain Road. That's sort of why I say
Would it
50/50.
have- would it have swayed you either way?
On the other hand,
But you can
when you
say-
look at the separate question 6,
Right.
Yes.
which is should we go to Black Mountain Road?
I know, that's what's-
55% say yes,
And 44% say
and
no.
44% say no.
So it's sort of, I mean, it's sort of the same though. But David, that almost means it's 55-44. Here, it's like
50/50.
50-50, so it's not that off if you think about it in the scheme of things.
It
It's
was
still
great.
50%.
I liked the poll.
Oh, I thought it was great too.
I thought it was great.
So, moving right along.
I'm
If there's
sorry.
nothing else about the poll right at this moment, then the next item has to do with discussion and potential decision on preferred alternative and scheduling the special representative town meeting for March 12 at 8:30 a.m. So we've been planning for how we would warn the items for decision on March 12. And it's my understanding at this time that the town attorney has got some suggestions about what we need to do in terms of bonding authority. So I would ask the town attorney to start off by telling us what we need to do Well, let's pose a hypothetical now. Let's say the decision of the board was to do the full build out at Central, that being the no, not the third floor, the $6 million alternative at Central, and the $1.5 million, we'll get there.
Okay.
The $1.5 million new building in West Brattleboro, plus Black Mountain Road. What would we need to do for bonding authority at town meeting, please?
The only thing that you need to do for bonding authority at representative town meeting would be to allocate up to a certain amount for the Black Mountain Road alternative to be taken from the proceeds that were authorized in the 2012 vote. So my understanding is that would be somewhere in the range of $4.5 million that you would be allocating. You would be asking the representative town meeting members to allocate out of those authorized but not issued bonds up to $4.5 million towards the Black Mountain alternative. Everything else remains exactly the same. You do not need to rewarn anything with regard to the fire stations, because the fire stations are staying, or the renovations to the fire stations are staying in the locations as previously warned in the 2012 bond article. So the Vermont Bond Council, Paul Giuliani, had given an opinion about a year ago saying that it's because the possible change in location would require a reauthorization of those bond proceeds. If you're not changing the location, there's nothing you need to do. So even if the board wanted to shave down what is being done at Central Station or the West Brattleboro Station, that's a board decision that does not need to go back to representative town meeting. It's only the part that involves the possible move of the police station to Black Mountain Road that requires going back to representative town meeting.
For new bonding authority.
It's not new bonding authority,
But
it's
for different
allocating
bonding authority.
out of the authorized but unissued bonds, up to the 14.1 million, authorizing up to a certain amount of that to go towards the police station at a different location than previously authorized.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to two aspects of that. So one thing I think it's important just to be clear, I know everybody who's been following this and participating in the discussions, and certainly the board members know this as fact, but I think it's important that the record reflect that, in fact, the scope of what is proposed at this point to be constructed, especially at Central and to a lesser degree at West Brattleboro, is less than what was contemplated in 2012.
Right.
And so there have been savings identified by reducing the scope of the projects, but they are still full-scale replacement, renovation, expansion projects at the locations that were specified in 2012, and so therefore could fall under the prior action of town meeting. The other point I want to make is now that the police department, if you do approve this recommendation, we do move in this direction and have the warning article be worded in the manner that town attorney was just describing. Because it isolates this article that would reallocate funds from the 2012 authorization, would be very specific to the police alternative at Black Mountain Road. We lose one advantage procedurally to the 2012 action and the combining of these three projects into one overall project, which is that as they go forward, there's every possibility that one of the jobs might go really well and we might save some funds even compared to current estimates, while one of the jobs we might have some issues arise and need to spend a little more than what is currently estimated. In the three projects working together with one pool of funds, there's sufficient contingency included in that to be able to make those kinds of adjustments. Because this authorization would be specific just to the one project component, that's why you heard Bob talking about it in terms of $4.5 million. That's a number that I suggested to him for talking purposes. That's not tied to any construction estimate or any particular aspect of this, other than the fact that we're working with a number that's in the range of about $4.1 million for that component piece. And since in this authorization, it would be the upset figure for just that one piece, I thought it would be appropriate to provide some level of protection against a small overrun in that area. So a 10% contingency is not unusual for a project of this scope. 400,000 or so more would take you to about $4.5 million. I want to make clear that it's not intended to spend $4.5 million, and in any case, the total overall amount that would be available to be spent for the projects would remain unchanged from the prior approval.
So we're not
Yes,
gonna,
Lord.
we're not gonna have a warning for representative town meeting until after the meeting on the 11th, right? Until after the special meeting.
No, that's not the case. We need to warn the
Which meeting, which 11th? February 11th?
No, on the
March 12th.
Or March 12th.
March 12th.
March
No,
12th.
we'll have.
We have to warn the March 12th meeting between February 1st and February 11th. And so
Right.
our intent is to warn that meeting at your February 2nd regular select board meeting. The warning will already have been published for the regular town meeting that's going to happen on March 19th, because that actually ties to the March 1st town meeting day
Right.
election timeframe. So that comes before the special one, even though the two meetings will happen in the reverse order. We're okay with that, because if we proceed in the manner that the town authority described, and then action is taken on Saturday, March 12th by representative town meeting regarding the project,
Right.
we'll know what decision has been made at town meeting, and then under the budget article at regular town meeting a week later, we'll make a modification on the floor.
Well, that's what I was saying.
to
We're gonna
incorporate
have
that.
to adjust it at that point.
That's right, it'll be
That's
adjusted
what
during the regular
okay,
town meeting.
that's, I just
Yep.
want to make clear of that.
Yep.
The total number that
Right.
will be moved will
Right.
incorporate whatever, the total number that is moved on March 19th will incorporate whatever decision has been
On the
made
12th.
March 12th.
Right.
That's correct.
And we don't warn
Right.
the number, we just say to see how much money the town will
Okay.
raise
Right, in lieu of.
to defray its expenses.
But this budget document that you've approved tonight will be the budget document that's in the town report. It will be, for all intents and purposes, the proposed budget until such time as we actually have a figure that we can take from the March 12th meeting into the March 19th meeting.
Now, I had a separate question that I asked Peter, and I hope that maybe you've had a chance to think about it a little bit. If it got communicated to. If we only present that single bond-related item for Australian ballot decision on March 12th, then there's no decision by town meeting members in any sort of formal vote about whether we should proceed forward with the fire stations as previously discussed and approved. And I want to know if we're allowed to have not a bond article, but rather just an item on the warning for potential decision that town meeting authorizes the select board to go ahead and or to go ahead with construction of the two fire facilities under the prior bonding authority.
You could have another article on the warning for to give advice to the select board. So it'd be more in the advisory opinion with regard to that. You cannot then have a binding article at representative town meeting, because if you are then going back and trying to either reauthorize or in some ways rescind the 2012 bond authorization, that would have to be by Australian ballot. And I don't recommend that, because in that situation, or if you added to the language to the warning of moving it to Putney Road, and then tried to add on to that various savings to the fire department proposals, you run the risk of people voting no for two different reasons. So it would not be my advice to you to put extra wording in that type of the bond article. But what I hear, what you're looking for is really to ask the representatives to give the board advice as to what you'd like to be doing with regard to the extent of the renovations at the fire station. So long as that's advisory, the ultimate decision is going to be the board's decision pursuant to the authorization back in 2012 for the amount that's allocated to the fire station renovations.
So the reason I asked that question is that I thought it would be prudent to have the ability for town meeting to vote on both the fire portion and the police portion. And
Separately?
at this point, yeah, well,
Right.
I had initially thought that my preference would be to have the police and fire as separate decisions. What the town attorney has recommended is that we actually shouldn't even be voting on the fire again. So
Right.
the only ballot item would
be
be
the
for
fire,
police.
right.
But then I still think that it's prudent to have some item for action, even if it's advisory only, talking about fire. Because that's the full scope of the project. So that's why I had asked those questions. Anybody on the board have any questions about those procedural issues, about how we would potentially notice these things for voting and the warning at the March 12th meeting? Donna?
I don't have a question. I don't know that I agree with soliciting advice from the town meeting at this point on the fire. I feel like I respect your position on that a lot, and I understand where it comes from, but I feel differently about that particular item. I feel like we have done our due diligence in soliciting input, and I personally feel like at this point, I would like the select board to have a position and move forward. And my concern and fear is that soliciting that information at this point could potentially result in a deliberation that would really postpone action, and that worries me. So that's my position.
I have a question, maybe a couple of questions. We're talking about a special representative town meeting on Saturday, March 12th. Now, it seems like we're talking about it to have a conversation about and get advice about whether we should reallocate 4.5 million. Is that what that meeting would be about?
It's actually to get bonding authority, or to get authority to reallocate part of the previous bonding authority up to
So we
$4.5
need
million
that-
to
we
build
need
the
that
Black
from
Mountain
the-
Road
From the town meeting.
by ballot, because that's different from the original
Right,
authority.
so that's a town meeting, representative town meeting vote.
Yep.
And then, what were you saying would be Australian
And-
ballot?
Well, that is Australian ballot, that is binding. So that is at least Article 1. What David's
No, wait, let me
talking...
just, I thought Australian ballot was when the whole town voted.
No.
Okay, so, okay.
Under the
Just
charter,
means it's secret, yeah.
under the charter, bonding issues go to representative town meeting members to be voted upon by Australian ballot.
Okay.
I-
All right, let's,
Other
that
questions
makes
from
it
the
a lot
board?
clearer.
It's the time. Both of you look like you have questions.
No,
just
you really,
confused.
no, that just confused me a little bit.
Oh,
so
great.
I
So
just-
the Australian ballot allocating up to 4.5 million on the fire station will take place.
No,
No,
on the
police
police
station, I'm
station.
sorry.
Yeah.
Police station will take place on March 12th,
At town meeting,
yes. And now,
for vote by 150 people.
right, but is this 4.5 million from the 5 million that we are already bonded for?
Was
No.
from the 14 million that
Okay.
we got
That's-
authority for.
Okay, that's what I mean.
Yes.
But and then, because we're talking on the assumption that we're going to Black Mountain Road, and that's the,
That's just,
no, but I'm just saying this is where we're getting these figures from.
yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
If the decision of the board were to do the police department improvements here at the municipal center, no additional action by town meeting is required, because the 2012 authority would be sufficient to just proceed in that direction. So that's why
That's
you
right.
hear the shape of this article for March 12th being so focused on the reallocation of the funds to go to Black Mountain.
And when we do
Go ahead.
when we do the Australian ballot town meeting, basically, there's not much time to, the way we usually do it, you do the voting when you can't discuss things once voting starts, so how does that work?
The idea would that be that, as we've done in the past, would be to debate it for a while, then the polls, actually,
Call the question.
you can actually debate now after, they changed that rule.
Okay.
And I'll clarify that because I shouldn't be shooting from the hip up here, but I think you can actually debate that while the polls are open now. Was a rule change. I'll confirm on that to be sure. But what we've done in the past, at least, even assuming that you can't, is to debate that, and then the polls open, and then the polls close 30 minutes after the adjournment of the meeting. So Annette doesn't need to stay there till 7 o'clock like she used to have to do.
John?
So, and I just want to clarify this, the 5 million that we've already borrowed and the 4.5 million that we're allocating now for the police station does not total up to the amount that the whole project is worth,
Right.
which is the 14.
It doesn't
Right.
total up to the prior authorization
Okay.
because of the savings that have been identified over the course of, multiple different efforts during the past
Right.
2.5 years.
But,
I give it for a different reason, because what we would be doing on March 12th if we warn an Australian ballot item to reallocate $4.5 million to put the police station at Black Mountain Road is we're saying we already have authority to build Central and West Brattleboro within the $14 million of
Exactly.
authority.
Okay, I just
And
want-
now we're going
Right.
to do $4.5 million worth of authority
Right.
for Black Mountain Road, and the $5 million that we've already borrowed
yes.
is a different category
Exactly.
altogether.
Yeah, exactly.
It overlaps, but
Right.
it's different category.
Right.
That's right.
Right, so this is, it's getting a little convoluted, and it's getting a little, I'm just,
We're getting there, though.
I know,
We'll make a
I know
decision
we are.
tonight.
I know we are.
So, because we began with a discussion of what types of articles
Here it comes, Gabe.
we might have on the warning for March 12th, and the board talked about that at length. We'll now open that up to any questions or comments that anybody who's in attendance might have about that topic. Articles that might be on the agenda. Anybody? Mr. Reichman?
Franz Reichman, I'm a District 2 town meeting representative. This last little discussion about the board does or does not need advice or decision from town meeting, I think I understand what you're saying, and it makes sense. But to me, it poses a bit of a problem for town meeting members. I think those of us who've been paying attention to this as it's been developing over the past few months, it's sort of been with this expectation that we're going to get to say something meaningful about what the choices are. And it feels a little bit like a bait and switch here, and I think it could pose a problem for the actual decision that gets made if this isn't explained very clearly as to why this is, and even more than that, why it's okay. So I would tread very cautiously on that. I'm not saying that there's anything different you should do about it, but you should really think about how this is presented and pay attention to how people react to it. I'd also like to just give a name in terms of the survey, and I like the survey, but I just want to name the chief methodologic flaw, which is selection bias. And 500 people chose to participate, but they selected themselves. And you cannot generalize from those 500 people to the 11,000 plus people who didn't choose to participate. So even with big numbers in favor of a specific thing, there's even bigger numbers of people out there who you don't know anything about. So I just would caution you against concluding that this represents the true underlying percentages for the community, and you may have some surprises in store when those others who did not choose to participate come into the process.
Thank you. Ms. Weber, do you want to speak?
Orion Barber, District 1. This may not, you may not feel this is exactly germane, but to me it is germane. At the public meetings on the police, fire, and so forth, and in other places, I believe several times it was mentioned that the town manager said that the town could also go for a 30-year bond. And I have seen no numbers indicating what the tax impact would be as a result of that, as opposed to a 20-year bond. And I am all for the lowest possible taxes. I don't care how much it costs this town in the long run. I care about people being able to pay their taxes in the short run, because that's where we live. So I'd like to hear about that, and I'd like to see something in the public prints about it.
We certainly can gather up information about what a 30-year bond would set out for repayment schedule.
I think we had that down somewhere, didn't we? I think we did.
Yeah, we have that.
did.
Tax effect.
Right. Oh, I don't know about the tax effect, but I know we had it.
We have the information, and we'd be happy to produce it again so that you can see it does indeed reduce the amount by which the tax rate would need to increase initially. There'd be 10 additional years of repayment. There's an overall total cost all in with the interest payments that is higher for that alternative, but it does spread the cost of the improvement out over the more complete life of all those in the community who will enjoy the benefits of the improvement, and it does help with the tax, the imposition of the tax increase for the facility. So we'd be happy to show that to you again. That, I'd like to underscore, that particular decision is important, but doesn't need to be made as part of the board deciding what to send to town meeting now. Right. It will be important in the final decisions that are made around this to weigh the 20 years versus the 30 years and make an informed decision on that.
Thank you for raising that, John.
So, Bob, and it could be to anybody, Mr. Reichman's concern about being able to discuss the matter, am I hearing it correctly, that it can be discussed?
It certainly can be discussed. I think if the town meeting members have the expectation that they're going to be making the decision with regard to all of the renovations at the 2 fire stations and the police station, that is really not the way that it occurs, because that vote happened in 2012. Right. The town authorized up to $14.1 million for those renovations. And as Peter said, if the board says we're not going to go down the Black Mountain Road option, then there's nothing that would go back to representative town meeting to be voted on with regard to these projects. These projects, if they remain at the same locations, are the province of the select board to manage, build, shave costs here, deal with cost overruns there, you name it. And that's what the board has been doing in a very public process to get the input from the town as to how savings can be had on this. But as far as the expectation of representative town meeting, I don't want to say misplaced. There is that expectation. You're a town rep. You want to be weighing in on all of what's before the business of the town. But in this instance, legally, it's only the allocation, if the board does decide to go with the Black Mountain alternative, the allocation of previously authorized but unissued bonds up to that $4.5 million figure toward a different location than what was previously authorized.
Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess I want to accept responsibility for having created this confusion, because in our presentations at the 3 public meetings, we were pretty clear about working through a process with you and related to all three elements of the project, and I think did create an expectation that there would be a broader set of decisions that would be presented to, or at least a broader combined project that would be presented to town meeting for approval. It's only when we got to this 11th hour of the policy-making process to decide what to take to town meeting, and then huddled with the town attorney around, well, what form does this need to take for an article to be placed in front of town meeting, that it became clear that, the way it's been described tonight. And what I would suggest, for both in response to that concern and for consideration of the board, is that the chair's suggestion of having a second article that is explicitly just to receive the advice of town meeting is probably the artful way to
Handle that.
to be responsive to that concern, to gain the more comprehensive input of town meeting without running afoul of the legal process by which debt gets authorized.
Did that help?
John?
Yeah, I get it,
Okay.
I think you're having the right conversation.
Okay, good, good.
Any other questions or comments about any of that from the board?
I think that caution about being really clear is pretty important. I think, and, we obviously haven't talked about this at all, but it seems to me if we went to town meeting and had this long conversation and then took a straw poll at the end of it, there's overwhelmingly one way or the other, that would pretty much, whatever we had already previously decided, we would pretty much redirect it if it wasn't in support of that. So even though it's not, we're not saying there's going to be a ballot and we're going to follow that, if there's a ballot and a clear expression, we're probably going to pay attention to it.
Well, I think you might have misunderstood what I'm saying. Article 1, which is the Australian ballot on authorizing up to $4.5 million of the authorized but unissued bonds from the 2012 vote to the Black Mountain. That's binding.
Right.
Okay, so if that is approved, then the town has authorized the project for the police station renovations to occur at Black Mountain. What Peter and David are talking about is a second article, which would really be advisory as to the fire station renovations, which don't need any further authorization from representative town meeting as far as bonding. That's already been done in 2012. But to give the select board input as to whether the select board should build those renovations to the full extent of what was authorized at 14.1.
Or
The board has been doing a lot of work on coming up with alternatives which might cost less than that. That would be advisory to you, the select board, in terms of then going forward with those construction
Great, thanks.
projects.
Yeah, I wasn't clear on that.
Okay,
Thank you.
sorry,
And
thank
there's
you for
one
letting
more-
me explain.
Sorry, there's one more procedural issue there that also may respond to the question of what the public expects, and we'll get an opportunity to talk about. We had a series of informational meetings, 3 of them around Thanksgiving, and I think that every week since late November, police fire has been on the select board meeting agenda. But if we're going to have a town meeting on March 12th, and there's going to be a warning leading up to that meeting, we're also going to need to have an informational town meeting before that, which is not the informational town meeting for the March 19th general town meeting. We're going to have an informational meeting before the March 12th meeting about police fire. And so we're going to be inviting the 150 people who are town meeting members to come to our informational meeting before March 12th, probably within, what is it, Jan, 10 to 20 days before? Is there a statutory time frame?
I don't think so. We generally are a week
Right.
and a half.
We can, yeah.
Usually 10 days.
10 days before. And so we will be clarifying all of those issues. And we continue to work through a process at Select Board to get to the point where we're at a decision point so that we can do a warning. And all those procedural issues will sugar off when we get there. Are there other questions about those procedural issues relating to the votes? Well, then the next question, and this may have been backwards, but that happens sometimes that way, is what is your pleasure as members of the select board about preferred project alternatives for the police fire facilities renovation project and what we should be warning to town meeting?
I am not going first.
Well, I think the consensus of the board, from my impression, is that we're in favor of, and I would say at least 3 members of the board are in favor of, yeah, I see you. You-
Oh, yeah, he did have his hand up.
Did you have your hand up before?
Yeah, you did.
All right, let me finish. I think the preference of the board is to do the Black Mountain Road alternative. And I think the unanimous preference of the board at this point is to rebuild the fire stations at the addition at Central and to do a new station in West Brattleboro. And then there's some question about whether we should do additional investment to either put in the foundations for a 3rd floor or put in the 3rd floor. But that's what I'm hearing from members of the board. And that's why I started the discussion with town attorney about how the warning would look, because that's what I hear the board on the verge of deciding. So I continue to be way, way concerned personally about the costs associated with that. I said it in 2012 when we considered the project in the first instance. I think that adding 9 cents to the tax dollar in the biggest tax year, which is 2018 at this point, is a huge, huge hit. Huge hit. There are surrounding towns that have total tax rate, municipal tax rate of 50 cents. And ours is already $1.16, headed for $1.20 this year. And with the additional money, we're looking at $1.25 at least next year. It's way, way high. But on the other hand, the scope of the needs of those 2 departments and those 3 facilities, based upon everything I've seen and heard over all these years, requires that level of investment. So that's where I'm at. John?
All right, I'll go.
Oh, well,
No, oh, yeah.
what's your name,
yes,
sir? You should
yeah,
come to
absolutely.
the microphone
Yeah.
and tell us your name, please.
I'm David Manning. I live here, operate a business here, lived here for about 5 years now. And I just can't, I want to know what you all's plan is when you bring this to the people. Will we move this to Black Mountain Road? And they say no. Because I don't think that people really want the police station to move out of town. Personally, it took me 6 minutes to walk here today, and I just looked at it would have taken me an hour to walk to the new police station from my downtown apartment. And you know, if you don't have a car, you want to go and report or talk to the police, you have to get there. And now there's a whole bus service system that you all are going to have to set up to really, if you want people to get going up there. And I just toured the police department downstairs for an hour and a half with the chief here, and there's some problems there that need to be remediated. Certainly, like that's not an issue, like to be discussed, but the cultural aspect of moving the police station from downtown, and I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to fight against. When I was operating my fish and chip shop on Elliott Street, I came across a young man that was vandalizing my property. He was pouring a can of oil that I had stored in the alleyway down the stairs, and just so happened to cross him at this time, right when he had poured 2 gallons out and 48 gallons left that he would have poured. And I stopped him. He was intoxicated, and he left, and I followed him and had him arrested that evening. And I called the police department 3 times to speak to the arresting officer. And I'm going to not say his name right now to avoid him the embarrassment for his behavior. But 3 times over the course of 2 weeks, could you please get back to me? I want to get in contact with this young man so we can either A, have him in front of a judge to take care of this problem, or B, come and clean up the mess that he created. One of 2 things. And the officer didn't call me back. And I ended up running into him downtown, right in front of the co-op. And I talked to him. He was on duty, and I was like, "Officer, we have to have a conversation why the last 2 weeks I called you 3 times and left you a message to call me back about this incident, and you didn't do that." And you know what he told me? I didn't feel like I had to. He told me he didn't feel like he had to call me back, like there was no reason for it. And to me, that speaks to a separatism and an elitism from the police force that is unacceptable for our community. And it's unacceptable. I lived in Keene before moving over here. And I was there when we built a new fancy police department and doubled the size of it. And I'll tell you, in my time there and from what I heard about residents there, the way the police interaction with the people, it changed. It changed from when they moved to their downtown police station to when they moved to a few miles outside of their town center. And you're looking to do the same thing here. And I think that it's a mistake. And you all seem very set on doing it. But as your Survey Monkey results point out, and like Kate pointed out, when you get down to the nitty-gritty about how you ask these questions, you don't really have a simple majority here. You can put it up in charts and say 45% of people say build this, and then the other 3 that all the answers indicate not moving the police station. But they all, 51%, but it's 3 different ways, much smaller bars on the graph. It looks like you have an easy decision. But you're going to have to put this before a vote for everybody, and I don't think that we're going to support you. I personally don't support it. And I will tell everyone I know not to support it as much as I can, because I feel like it's bad culturally for the town. Like, you want to move the police station out? Like, not like the police came into my fish and chip shop and ate there, but, you know, like, it's nice that they're downtown and can go into the local places and participate in the community in that way. If they don't have that kind of elitist attitude that one officer did. And, you know, that's it. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Dave, thank you very much for your comments.
Did you want to go next?
You want it?
I mean, you can go, then I'll go.
Go ahead.
Well, what I'm about to say is not going to come to a surprise to Chief Fitzgerald. It's not going to come to a surprise to my fellow select board members, and it's not going to come as a surprise to people who have come and talked to me. I support keeping the police station in the municipal center. So if there's a motion made to move it to Black Mountain Road, I am going to vote no. And I want to speak on behalf of myself and everybody else who feels the same way I do, that voting, I'm in a position where I'm going to vote no. And that's not a negative vote towards the police. It's not a vote against them needing a new facility. And so I don't want that to be perceived that way. And I know this came up at one of the town meetings where, you know, everyone was saying, oh, we should move and it's, you know, we should do it. And somebody got up and said, you know, I can't afford the taxes to move, and I don't want it to be perceived because if I vote no, that means I don't support the police. So I need to get that out for myself and for others. I'm just in a position where I think the motion's going to be made to move, so I'm going to have to vote no. But I support the police 100%. I think they need and deserve a facility. I went, you know, through that facility 3 years ago, and it does need to be fixed. But I don't believe that moving to Black Mountain Road is the answer. I think it's a great to have people downtown. I worry about putting the police department where even if you drive down Putney Road, you cannot see that building off of Black Mountain Road. You have to drive to Black Mountain Road to see it. And I really don't like that idea. I'm also am concerned about the tax implications, and I wish there was a way we could work it out so it could stay in this building and do it cheaper than we think we can. And I've been against moving it to Black Mountain Road ever since it's been proposed, and I've thought very long and hard about can I move past the way I feel about this? And I've talked to a lot of people, and to be really honest with you, I work right on Main Street. The people, and again, it's just like a poll, depends on who the people are, but the people that have come in, and again, it's like a handful, the people that have come into my office are the ones that have come in and said, don't move it out of downtown. So nobody has really convinced me that the right thing to do is to move it to Black Mountain Road. And so I haven't changed my mind. I've kept an open mind even after, from the very beginning, saying I don't want to move it out of downtown. I just, for a lot of reasons, think it's a mistake to move to Black Mountain Road. So again, there's gonna be a no next to my name on this, but that it's not indicative of my support for the police. It's not indicative of my lack of understanding that we need the facility be upgraded, because I support the police, and I understand the facility has to be upgraded. And I almost feel, I feel bad that I even have to explain that, but I don't want that to be interpreted by the police department. I'll look right up Chief Fitzgerald, because I think they do a great job. But I say that on behalf of myself and other people who feel the exact same way that I do. So it could be flipped around, and other people could be voting no, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm going to be in a position to have to vote no. But it's more of my vote is supporting staying in the municipal center, and not supporting moving up. But it's not a no. I don't think it needs to happen, because something needs to happen, because our police officers deserve it. But I will be voting no on moving it to Black Mountain Road.
John?
Okay, so, I wasn't going to get into the police station, but.
Well, I had to, because
No, that's fine, but, no, I wasn't gonna get, because everybody knows my feeling about it, but, I'll reiterate it just a little bit. But one of the points, and with all due respect, if you were driving down Main Street, you wouldn't know the police station was here. So, not being able to see the physical building, I don't get that. And I know you're concerned, you're a downtown person, and you want everything downtown. But as, the chief has expressed over and over and over again, you can dispatch from Burlington. That doesn't mean that there aren't gonna be a police presence downtown. So, and then again, everybody knows my feeling about the municipal center. This is just a giant hole that we keep dumping water into, money into, and I just, I don't see it. So I'm not gonna get into that. I wanna get into the fire station. And I know that it's not a big concern for a lot of people, but for me, for $550,000, it makes no sense to take that third floor off at all. At all. I mean, you're never going to build that square footage for that price. I'm a builder, and that to me is so short-sighted, because it doesn't get us into the future. It gets us 5 or 8 years down the road. I mean, the maintenance on the buildings are going to be fine, if we do the improvements that we're supposed to do. But not adding that floor, just because, and it only takes off $550,000. I'm going to fight for that till the end. I am not going to squash any of our to get this thing moving forward. If the consensus is to not go that way, but just like Kate, I wanted to point out that I believe that's penny wise and pound foolish not to add that third floor on. So the other aspects of it, I think are fine.
I like how thoughtful each of you are, and respect that a lot, and this has been a long process. I will be voting for the move to Putney Road, and the reason I'm doing that is because I really believe, after my own research, that is what is in the town's best interest. And I trust completely and am reassured that there will be a strong police presence all over Brattleboro. I think Brattleboro isn't just Main Street, although it's easy to forget that sometimes. I think there are probably a lot of people who live out on the Putney Road end of things that would be happy to have proximity to the police station, just like we've enjoyed for numbers and numbers of years. And I also have heard the chief's willingness to make sure, and I do think having people be able to get to the police department is an important issue. I would want the town to take that up and make sure that there was a way to do that. But I also heard at each of the 3 presentations, the chief say, are committed to coming to you, and I believe that. I have had that experience as a resident of Brattleboro. And I believe that, the department will stand behind its word. Having toured the facility last week, I cannot get the images out of my mind. And while I understand that some of those things can be corrected, it really feels to me like it's not even a half measure. It's not more than a Band-Aid to do that. And I don't want to, and it's a separate issue, what happens to the municipal building, because I think there's a lot of possibilities that we can't get into tonight. But for me, I think having the department to be able to inhabit a space that facilitates ease of communication and gives a lot of opportunity to make sense of how the department is structured in terms of where different officers are located and how the flow of communication happens and where things are stored and how evidence gets handled, and that requires a very thoughtful space. As for the floor that you feel passionate about, I don't know that the town has the finances or the appetite for that, but I would support construction that would allow for that floor, additional floor, to be built when the town feels like it's fiscally able to do that. That seems like not a lot to ask, and something that potentially could be beneficial down the road. So I would be in favor of doing the construction in such a way that would allow that to happen in the future. So those are my 2 pennies. I also want to say again, I think borrowing for this project in a way that doesn't put all of, or the majority of, the burden and the increase in 2018 makes a lot of sense. So whether we do a 20-year borrow or a 30-year bond, I think if there's a way to do that spreads out the tax consequence, that's a really important consideration and respectful to the people who are struggling already to pay the taxes.
There's just a zillion things I want to say, and I have said a bunch of them and not said a bunch of them, but I think what I'm left with at this point, and you got me thinking about it again, Kate, but I think we have to make a decision. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. I think I hadn't thought about what David mentioned about the actual physical being away from downtown might change the culture of the police, but I'm pretty confident that the chief is not going to let that happen. And now he's aware of it, so I think it's even less likely that would happen. But I think the preponderance of the advantages is on Black Mountain Road, to my thinking. And the town is bigger than Main Street, and so I'm still going to go along with that. The third floor, I never quite understood why there needed to be a third floor. It was mostly, aside from the emergency services, it was mostly a meeting and training room. And I'm sure there's a value to that, but I don't know if it's that big. So I don't see how it's going to hold us back. But I think putting a foundation in case it turns out to be the case, is probably a good idea. I think it's time to decide and see how it works out. That's always the case. You make a decision, and then everything is different, because that decision's been made, and the things that happen after that are pretty much unknown. And so the decision, I think we're going to get better result from Black Mountain Road than staying here in the long run.
I want to say, Kate, that I agree with you about keeping the police station downtown to the extent that that's a realistic possibility. But a significant part of our role here is looking at all information and thinking about compromise as well. And I have that same position that you have personally about valuing having the police station downtown. But after the stand that I took 2 weeks ago saying, let's keep it downtown and let's try to spend less money to keep it downtown, I went back and looked at the relative strengths and weaknesses of the various alternatives. And I became convinced that without spending $5.5 million totally to renovate this building, we can't really have the police station here in a manner that's going to serve the needs of the agency for the short and the medium and the long term, and do it in a healthy and safe way that facilitates their work. And so my vote ultimately for the Black Mountain Road alternative is a compromise away from my personal position in favor of keeping the station downtown here, but recognizing what the position is on the board, and recognizing that the cost of staying here is just significantly more expensive. And I really feel strongly about keeping the costs down. I also want to thank Mr. Manning particularly for your concerns. I think that you bring up a number of different issues. The issues relating to the responsiveness of an individual police officer and the culture of the police agency is one set of issues that really needs to be constantly attended to. And the chief was here and heard everything that you had to say. And so that's a good thing. And thank you for saying it. There are then those separate issues about the benefit of having the station downtown where people can walk to it, which is a benefit. But then there are also those other issues related to cost and what work would need to be done here in order to make this really a workable space, that are yet another whole set of issues that we've been talking about for months and months and months. So,
What would we do with this space if we moved the police
right.
station?
We talked about that at our last meeting, and it's a topic for discussion. Is there anybody who's in attendance who wants to speak to police, fire, renovation, project, preference alternatives? All right.
It is? Oh. Well, let's just read it.
I move to endorse the Black Mountain Road alternative for the police department at full-scale improvements recommended by staff for the Central Fire Station and the West Brattleboro Fire Station, not including the structural elements for the third floor.
Shot down again.
Well,
No, that's fine.
amend. You know,
No,
there's three of you in favor
no, I
of it.
told you I wasn't going to do that.
Well, there's three of you in favor. I'm just making the motion.
No, no.
I'm not amending.
You're not amending either?
No.
Is there any discussion? There's a motion to endorse Black Mountain Road alternative and full-scale improvements without the third floor additions for the fire stations. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
That carries 4-1. I guess I'll inquire whether people on the board want to see an article for advisory purposes about the fire stations on the warning. Let's just go across the table, please. Don is against it.
For on the night,
On the 12th, advisory article about fire station alternatives.
Can I just ask a little question about that? Will we know who are we advising? Are we advising the March 19th town
I
meeting?
know, I'll answer that question. So we already have
Right.
authority to build out both fire stations based upon the October 2012 bond authorization. And the town attorney consulting with bond counsel has concluded that we don't need any further authority. And that asking for more specific authority is gonna muck up the works and risk things getting all confusing. I have suggested the possibility that we could ask town meeting representatives if they want to advise us as select board to use that authority that they gave us in October 2012. Sounds kind of silly.
I don't want to muck it up.
So you're not in favor?
I'm not in favor
I'm
of
not.
that.
I don't know.
Right?
I'm afraid
I wanna have
I'm afraid
hear from
we're
people
being
that-
misleading, and
Yeah,
we're making
right.
people think that they are advising us on something that they can't advise us on.
Right.
Anybody have any views about that? So we're not going to have that as part of any sort of motion. So I then move to schedule a representative town meeting on Saturday, March 12, 2016, starting at 8:30 a.m. at the Brattleboro Middle School multipurpose room to discuss the police fire facilities project.
We don't have to be there.
Is there any further discussion on that matter?
Tuesdays and Saturdays.
And we're just meeting all the
Everyone.
time.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. And then the article will be drafted by town attorney consistent with what's been discussed here tonight with taking $4.5 million from the $14 million authority from October 2012. And that'll be presented at our February 2nd meeting,
For the
where
warning.
we warn the meeting for the March 12 meeting.
Right.
To
Got it.
warn the, where we do the warning for the March 12 meeting. Yeah? Oh, I understand. I understand.
We are moving.
Well, whether for better or for worse, this meeting is gonna last 2 more hours, and BCTV and the ASL interpreters need a break. So we're taking a 5-minute break. Sorry to everybody who's here for some other business. Select board meeting is reconvened at 8:18 on Tuesday, January 19th, 2016. It turns out that the owner's representative is not here to address issues relating to the stairs at the parking garage. So that item will be taken up in the order in which it was originally warned. The first item under new business is a series of representative town meeting articles. The first representative town meeting article relates to the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. Peter, do you want to just summarize where we were and what this is,
Sure. So,
please?
you saw the presentation a little over a month ago from the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance of its work plan and its budget for FY17. You had some questions regarding not so much that work plan and budget, but the related surplus and purchases that were proposed by the board and approved by the membership of the DBA. You asked me to do some research on that. I did. We reported back to you last week regarding the outcome of that work. You had a little bit more interaction with the leaders of the DBA and decided at that time that you were prepared to move forward. So you approved by motion last week the work plan and budget, but needed to have specific wording in front of you so that you could agree to place a warning, an article on the warning for a town meeting regarding that item. And that's what's before you right now.
Any questions or comments from anybody who's in attendance or anybody on the board? We're ready for a motion, please.
Can we move all three?
No, just the one about DBA for now, please.
I move we add the following article to the representative town meeting warning for March 2016. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $78,000 through special assessments on town properties within the Downtown Improvement District, as approved by town meeting March 19, 2005, and as delineated in the town ordinance entitled Municipal Act to Establish and Regulate the Downtown Improvement District, to be used for capital and operating costs of projects of the town's duly designated downtown organization as reflected in its work plan and budget.
We have a motion to add the $78,000 item for DBA to the representative town meeting warning. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Will be opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next, we have 6 requests for tax exemptions, which have to be granted by town meeting if these properties are going to be exempted from Brattleboro real estate taxes. Peter, can you speak to that briefly?
Certainly.
Particularly if you would speak to the municipal and education portion as well, because I don't know why we're exempting properties from the municipal, from the education taxes at this point. No, we have to pay them.
There is, in the provisions of the law related to this type of tax relief, the entity must request it, and then it's, the action is available to town meeting to approve or deny the tax exemption. And the request can be for either just exemption from the municipal portion or from the municipal and the education portion. When the exemption also applies to the education portion, the rest of the taxpayers of the town pick up that difference on the education portion in order to make whole the town's, the payment of the town's obligation related to that, using the state's education funding formula. So these various items that are before you have some different history to them. Some of them have been before you and before town meeting multiple times. Some, I believe, were there may be some on here that were more recently requested. But what is true is all of them are being requested this evening as renewal of what was previously granted to them from 5 years ago, I believe.
Some of them 10 years.
But yeah.
Some less than 5 years. We're getting along
Some for
the
less
same
than
side.
5 years.
Because of rotation.
I see. Okay, so so where each at its appropriate time in the past came forward initially to make a request and was dealt with at that time in either as a partial or a whole, both tax relief on both parts. They now have come back before you for renewal of what was previously approved, and there's no obligation of the select board to recommend nor of the representative town meeting to approve exactly what's been requested or any particular tax relief for these items. So, matters up for your consideration. You do have people who are here this evening to speak on behalf of at least some of the organizations.
Yes. I think what we'll do first, before we address the articles in any further detail, is ask people who are here to speak to these articles if they'd like to do so. Mr. Costello, do you want to speak?
You've been here long enough.
I have what's my clock, and I would like to say this. I have been engaged in public service for the past 40 years in various capacities at various levels. And when I was a little kid legislator, a fellow from Fairfax, Senator Sewell, used to say the best public servants are from Brattleboro. And that was true then, and it's true now. And it's just a credit to our town to have people of your experience and competence working so diligently on our behalf. And I want to thank you for doing that.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Costello.
Ours is pretty straightforward. We've been there for a long time doing this, and we're asking just for the municipal portion. We maintain the field, we improve it, and a great service for our community.
Thank you.
Thank Thank you. I'm Cindy Jerome from Bradley House and Holton Home. Several years ago, Holton Home was able to start paying the balance due on its education portion of the tax after we were able to get an increase from the legislature in exempting us from part of that. So we are asking for a continuance of an exemption from the municipal portion. Bradley House is not in a position to do that right now. I'm sure you all know that we just merged a few weeks ago. And Holton Home's plan is bringing Bradley House up to a more sustainable and robust position so that we can do exactly from Bradley House what Holton Home does and cover our education tax as well. Not in a position to do that now, so I'm hoping that you'll be willing this time to continue a full exemption for Bradley House. Any questions about that?
I just want to make sure you're looking for the municipal and education portion for Bradley House, but not for Holton Home.
That's right. Holton Home would only be a municipal exemption. We pay the education tax due after considering the legislated exemption that we have from a portion of our education tax.
Thank you.
Thank
Anybody else
you.
have any questions?
No, thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Thayer Tomlinson, representing the Family Garden. We're a nonprofit child care center located in western Brattleboro. I've been on the board for about 5 years, and we are requesting both municipal and educational tax exemption. We have had fairly significant for us funding from foundational support over the past for operational activities. All of the foundations that have provided us support in the past have now moved on to overall child care policy reform versus supporting individual centers. So we are financially just staying above water, and it would be a severe burden to us to have to pay the taxes at this time. We are looking to change some of the model of our organization so that in 5 years, ideally, would just request the municipal exemption, but at this time, we're requesting both municipal and educational exemption. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Any questions from anybody on the board? Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else who's in attendance want to speak to any of the tax exemptions?
Oh, we're just chatting.
Well, I mean, we don't have the ability to not pay the educational portion of the taxes.
Right.
So
That's what-
when we vote to exempt the educational portion of the taxes, what it means is that
We don't pay it.
we're paying it anyway in lieu of the organizations.
Right.
And if there's an argument to be made that if it's going to be an exemption, that, the state should be authorizing that, because they're the ones who are saying that it can't be otherwise not paid. And that's a quandary if we're going to be exempting, for me, if we're going to be exempting any portion of the education, any of these organizations from education taxes, my preference is that we do that for a much narrower time period,
Well, that's what,
like a year.
That's what we were just talking about.
And then make those organizations come back next year and show what steps they've taken to try to address that issue on the state level. I feel bad, but
right,
I mean,
'cause-
we're paying it anyway. Go ahead, Kate.
no, that's my concern about this, is that, and I understand the circumstances that the organizations are in, but we as a town are in a similar, we're not overflowing with cash, as we've just discussed, and we're gonna put up, we're gonna have a new police facility, which is gonna cost us money. We were just talking about, we may have to look for budget cuts, and I know in the scheme of things, people will say, well, what's, a couple, 20,000, whatever it would add up to be. I don't even know what it adds up to be. It's just concerning to me that we're passing something on to the taxpayers. But I understand at the same time, that, but it's a tough one.
It's
and
a tough one. The problem is, we've set a precedent.
Well, I suggest we do what the motions do, which is pass it off to the town meeting reps and have the conversation there.
It's going to anyways because of the motions.
But we
Well,
could
unless
ch-
we change the motions.
Well, we could change the years, instead of saying come back in 5 years, do what David suggested and say come back in a year or whatever. That it gives us more flexibility instead of being locked into something for 5 years. You know, it's concerning because we are passing this on and we're gonna have to deal with it somehow. But, you know, we may have to deal with it in the budget.
So we could put a time limit on it and still grant the relief. We might want to consider, and this won't surprise anybody, doing a 2-year limit, because if a organization that's already struggling has some time to really look at financing and make efforts to become more self-sustaining, then it takes time. So I think a 2-year period would be
I'm confused about the state.
a little more reasonable to make those kinds of lasting changes.
Yeah.
How does that fall
Yeah.
back into us?
Because somebody has to pay the state education tax, and if they're not paying it, we have to pay it.
It goes into our tax.
Right. So I think that's what we all in the public needs to understand it. It's not like we're saying you don't have to pay it and no one does. And no one pays it. We're saying you don't have to pay it, but the taxpayers end up paying it. You know what I mean? So it's not like
Everybody pays it.
right. Everybody has to make up for what we exempt other people for.
Well, the same on the
So-
municipal side of it.
No. No, that pool of money that has to be raised in order to fund municipal operations is then spread across less taxpayers and less money on the grant list. But for the education tax purpose, we have to raise the portion that we exempt and send it off to the state.
Yep.
So in essence, somebody is footing the bill, and in this case, it's the town that's footing the bill. Does that make sense?
Well, no, it does make sense, but again, I think we've set a precedent over the years, so if we change it, I have no problem changing it to a lesser year, but I don't know if we should go down to 1 year. I mean, like Donna said, maybe 2 or 3, you know, but,
All right. I move to add the following articles to the representative town meeting warning for March 2016. To see if the town will approve exemption of the municipal tax portion of real estate taxes for Brattleboro Post 5 Little League for a period of 5 years. To add the following additional article to the representative town meeting warning for March 2016. To see if the town will approve exemption of the municipal tax portion of the real estate taxes for Bradley House for a period of 5 years, and the education tax portion of the real estate taxes for Bradley House for a period of 2 years. To add the following additional article to the representative town meeting warning for March 2016. To see if the town will approve exemption of the municipal tax portion of real estate taxes for Holton Home for a period of 5 years. To add the following additional article to the representative town meeting warning for March 2016. To see if the town will approve exemption of the municipal tax portion of real estate taxes for the Family Garden Inc. for a period of 5 years, and the education tax portion of real estate taxes for Family Garden Inc. for a period of 2 years. To add the following additional article to the representative town meeting warning for March 2016. To see if the town will approve exemption of the municipal tax portion of real estate taxes for Rescue Inc. for a period of 5 years. And then to add the following additional final article to the representative town meeting warning for March 2016. To see if the town will approve exemption of the municipal tax portion of real estate taxes for Camp Wabanong Inc. for a period of 5 years. Got that, Jen?
Well done.
Yes, clarification. Purposely you left out of rescue.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything, okay.
Is there any further discussion? on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thanks for coming. The next item on the agenda is to address warning on the March 19 town meeting for amendments to the town charter relating to mechanical tabulation of ballots and deadlines for incumbent town meeting members to submit notice of intent. Ms. Cappy, would you like to speak to what these articles mean? Since you've been here for a long
Annette, you're
time.
still here. You could have called in sick.
Thank you. Okay, the first amendment, both of the amendments, by the way, went to representative town meeting last year and were overwhelmingly approved. But because of the way the charter is written, they needed to come back a second time. So the first one is to change the deadline for incumbent town meeting members to submit their notice of intent to run. The way it's written in the charter now, if you're an incumbent town meeting member and choose to continue when your term is up, rather than do a separate petition and get the required signatures, you only need to return your intent to run. And that is the deadline is 7 weeks before before the election. For anyone else that's not an incumbent, it's 6 weeks, and this proposes to change all of the deadline to 6 weeks because the 7th week now runs into Martin Luther King's holiday. So there would be no difference between the incumbent town meeting petition deadline and other members. And the second is just to allow the mechanical tabulation of ballots for early voting. If someone chooses to vote early in the office, rather than go through the same process that someone would go through if the ballot is mailed to them, that's filling out the certificate, filling out their ballot, putting it in the envelope, and then the ballot envelopes don't get opened until Election Day. This would change the method for those in the office to voting just as though they would at the polls. They would vote their ballot and deposit it into the tabulator. The tabulators would stay sealed and locked until 7 o'clock on election night, just as the other ballots would do. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody on the board have any questions about this request for a town meeting article on the warning?
Do you keep the ballots, the paper ballots that come in, or will you, under this process, keep the ballots that go through the machine?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody who's in attendance have any questions? I think we're ready for motion.
Move to see if the town will approve an amendment to the Brattleboro Town Charter, Addendum A, Acts of 1959, number 302, Section 4A, to change the deadline for incumbent town meeting members to submit their notice of intent to have their name placed on the ballot as presented.
We have a motion to approve the amendment of the charter for deadlines for incumbent town meeting members. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Is there another motion?
Okay,
You're on a
okay,
roll.
go ahead.
To see if the town will approve an amendment to the Brattleboro Town Charter, Article 2, Section 3, to allow mechanical tabulation of ballots from citizens that use early voting as presented.
We have a motion to seek amendment of the charter to authorize mechanical tabulation of ballots. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Annette, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
That's it for A.
Next matter on the agenda is a request from Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies for funding.
Good evening. My name's Adam Grinold. I'm here with the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation, and of course Bob Stevens, who's here as the chair of SeVEDS. So I think I'm going to let Bob lead off and follow with some other comments.
So thanks for allowing us to come tonight. We're here requesting some funding to continue some work that SeVEDS is doing, but which is one reason that we're here. The other reason that SeVEDS is visiting with all the select boards in the region is it's really forcing us to have a conversation with communities and give an update on what, in fact, SeVEDS and BDCC are doing. As Adam mentioned, I'm currently the chair of SeVEDS. I also sit on the BDCC board and have for many years. So it's an interesting insight into the activity that's happened over really the last 9 years. And SeVEDS has been around. I'm looking at Patrick because I think Patrick was really one of the first people involved in SeVEDS in its inception 9 years ago, which, as many of you have known from presentations that we've done, we spent a lot of time understanding what was happening. We realized the economy wasn't working very well here. Spent some time to determine, specifically that, as you've heard, our population was flat to declining, our wages were lower than other places, we had significant loss of jobs, and I think that you and other communities see that reflected in your struggles with your budgets. Your grand list is growing at a very anemic rate, and we have trouble having economies, really being able to do anything in this community that we work on. So if you fast forward a few years, SeVEDS did some, I think, some really good work early on with some outside consultants. We got some money from the federal government, the Economic Development Agency, put together a strategic plan over several years, worked with a committee on trying to figure out what to do with post-VY. That committee's work actually led to the negotiations with VY that created the $10 million Economic Development Fund that we're seeing and we're using. In fact, $2 million of that went to support the GS Precision project recently, and several hundred thousand went to Eli Gould's project out on Ferry Road. In addition to that, since the strategic plan has been completed, that plan included a number of initiatives that were identified as areas that we could make this economy start to grow. And I'm just going to give you an overview. Adam's got some more details, but we identified green building as a cluster that had specific assets in this area that we might be able to grow jobs. The precision manufacturing was a big one. Our hospitals, healthcare center was a large one, and then really the colleges are sort of the fourth one. All of those clusters, in fact, we've gone back to the federal government, gotten some money. We're now working actively with an outside consultant on developing the green building cluster. We have a group that's formed that meets on a regular basis that's figuring out how to take what is a sort of a regional asset. We are, in this case, actually working with surrounding counties. Bennington County, Franklin County, Cheshire County is working with us to identify how to sort of grow that, because we understand from the help we have outside as consultants and the EDA that our economy is more than just Windham County, that we need to sort of work with outside areas, and in fact we are starting to do that. I think what I wanted to say in summary, though, that after 9 years, Brattleboro or Windham region at this point has a very robust economic development enterprise in place between BDCC and SeVEDS. I mean, we have 6 to 8 people that every day go to work on trying to change this economy. That is more than any other community in the state. Chittenden County kind of comes close, but Chittenden County has an economy that works. Ours does not. We have been able to, through support, through grants, funds, sort of position ourselves to be able to put resources, and we're starting to see things start to happen. Adam visits as through his BDCC efforts with businesses on a regular basis, mostly in this community. We now know of, of GS Precision that thinks that they're going to, believes they can add 100 jobs. We know of half a dozen other businesses in this community that are looking, that they see growth, they see the ability to grow their businesses. They're struggling to find employees right now. We have a couple of large employers in town that have the potential to add significant white-collar jobs if they can convince their corporate offices that we can find employees to fill that. We have a serious problem with now trying to backfill that workforce that left this area. So what does that mean for Brattleboro? What is this request? This request is really to ask the communities to support this ongoing effort. We feel that changing the economic climate is really a long-term game. It's going to take us years. We've been at it for 7 years. It'll take another 10 years before we start to see real change, but we are starting to see significant improvements. And we need to continue to invest in things like workforce development, and Adam can show you more specifics about what we're doing with that. In these individual specific business clusters where we see the opportunity to help those businesses grow, what we hope will be the benefit for Brattleboro in the end is jobs, and we are focused on jobs that pay more than the median wage. We want to see the average wage in this county rise comparatively speaking to the other counties, and we've got some statistics where we're actually seeing some of that growth, although I will admit that that growth has happened before the effects of VY closing down. So we already had a flat economy. We have a blow coming with the VY people leaving. We're trying to figure out how to backfill that with more jobs. We expect more jobs will generate more grand list. I mean, in this, Brattleboro really is the regional center. It is the hub for economic activity. Most of the work that we do is in Brattleboro. We go to these conversations in Dummerston, and they're saying, well, what do you do for us? And you're doing all these things in Brattleboro. Well, really, it acts as a region. I mean, a lot of the employees live in Brattleboro, so that will affect the housing market. And ultimately, if we get to the point where we have commercial activity that is more prosperous, we'll start to see some increase in the grand list and the commercial grand list side of things. We saw, maybe 10 years ago, a decline in the value of our commercial grand list on a reappraisal, and it shifted over to residential. Well, again, that was because we had major employers leave town and a lot of square footage of industrial buildings that became empty and no market to buy those back up. So, we can now point to, precision manufacturing businesses in this town that are ready to grow and add significant number of people, of software companies that are looking to do that, of pharmaceutical companies and food, food manufacturers that are looking to add people, all with jobs that pay well. And we're trying to figure out how to sort of keep this engine going so that we start to see some overall improvement in the regional economy. So that's an overview. I think I'll hand it over to Adam if you want to fill in or correct where I've got this wrong.
If I could ask you maybe to hand out those as well, please. So I think one of the important items I would like to leave here tonight is knowing that this board and the community at large really understand the difference between SeVEDS and the BDCC. So the BDCC, well, first let me start by saying that we've been doing these municipal visits for about 2 months now, and I think tonight marks our 16th community and select board that we've met with. So thank you for hearing us tonight, and thanks to all the other communities that have really taken an opportunity to listen to our reports on what we're seeing throughout Windham County. So the BDCC is one of 12 regional development corporations for the state of Vermont. So we are the eyes, ears, and feet on the ground for the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. We receive a small fee for that service, as do all the other RDCs. For the BDCC, that represents only about 3% of our budget. BDCC has a board. It's many people have been committed to that board for over a decade. It's a strong, diverse group. The mission is to work with specific businesses to help grow and retain those businesses and work with new entrepreneurs as they look to enter the area. So that is the focus of the BDCC. Focus of SeVEDS is a little different. It's got a different mission. And that group is made up of grassroots effort throughout the region. That board is 18 people strong at the moment. And that mission is to help grow the population, to increase the wages, to increase the quality of the workforce, and to lower the median age. So those are some of the metrics that SeVEDS is really tackling first. And some of the data that I'll share briefly that we're now starting to see come back to us from the federal census and other reporting is showing that we're actually making some headway in that. And so we're really excited about that. So the real difference between what SeVEDS does and what the BDCC does, again, BDCC works with businesses on projects. SeVEDS works on the underlying economic indicators, i.e. the economy. So one thing that SeVEDS lacks is people. SeVEDS has no staff. SeVEDS contracts with the BDCC to implement its mission. So in effect, the BDCC is implementing the mission of the SeVEDS board. And so that's a really important distinction. So when we're out talking, often people are confused if we're talking about BDCC or SeVEDS. So we're really just trying to do a little bit better job of communicating to Wyndham Region what those differences are and where the focus is. So I handed out, or Bob handed out, some documents. I'd like to first draw your attention to this document, the blue arrow going across. This is our workforce map, our continuum. And if you start over here at the bottom, it starts with pre-K and comes all the way over here to the retirees. And then each block is a different strategy that we're implementing. So one of the primary focuses that we have right now is in the retention. So we've gone out and worked with every single school in Wyndham Region, all the different middle schools and high schools, met with those counselors, met with the superintendents, met with the principals, and really have a firm understanding of what each school is doing in regards to career awareness for Wyndham Region. And what we've found is that many people are unaware that there are jobs here for their children to stay. For some communities, they aspire for their children to go to college and leave because they don't feel there's enough opportunities. So what we lack is understanding that there are opportunities. And we have to communicate the very fact that these businesses that Bob mentioned are looking to hire. And so I have a 13-year-old son. My friends, their peers, they don't know that their children have an opportunity to, rather than just taking the required math or science credits and then stopping, if they took 1 or 2 more credits, went a little beyond just the minimum, took 1 year of school after high school, perhaps even a dual enrollment their senior year, paid for by the state, they could go to that 1 year of college, come out of that and get a job in Wyndham County making $50,000 a year. Those opportunities exist today, and there's many other similar stories and different avenues on how to get it. So that's really our mission, is to make sure we have the funnel in the school to help those students understand those career opportunities. We're working with the businesses to educate them that, in fact, with a little time and effort, we can help communicate that to the schools and bridge that gap that we've discovered, which is between the schools and the businesses. So we're super excited about this. It's getting a lot of traction. We're going to have programs in the schools this coming fall, and there's been a lot of support throughout the business community and the school community. Second document I'll draw your attention to is sort of hot off the press. Front page goes over the SeVEDS goals that I touched on earlier. If you then flip to page 2, we look at employment. Colored one, yep. Page 2 is employment. And this document is available on brattleborodevelopment.com if anyone wants to see it who's watching on TV. We have here, I'll draw your attention over to the right-hand portion where it says Wyndham County. And we see that in comparison to Bennington, Cheshire, and Franklin, our employment has grown 1.4%, the most out of any of those other communities. We go to the next page, gross domestic product, GDP. See across the top in red, Wyndham County. We look at the GDP of 2012, 2013 in the counties of Cheshire, Franklin, Bennington, and the state of Vermont. The number one growth is seen here in Wyndham Region.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
This is before Yankee, right?
These numbers are current. You can see down at the postscripts, most of them are 2012, 2013. There's, on the next page, I'm going to do one that's 2009 to 2013.
Okay, so Yankee hasn't factored
They
in
haven't.
yet.
They have not factored in.
I was getting all excited for
I
a
know.
second. Okay.
We had a good trajectory.
But the good news is that we've built a bit of a cushion to come down on, and probably most important for us is we feel the strategies that we've implemented through the identification of the SeVEDS has allowed us to focus on a specific target and strategies on how to improve the economy. And by looking at this data, we certainly will take the position that it's working. One more line down below, Wyndham County for the exports. Again, 5.6 in comparison to Cheshire County, 1.7, Franklin 3.8, Bennington 3.5. So demonstrating significant growth. Lastly, on the back page, we see per capita income in 2010 of Wyndham County was $38,000. In 2013, it is $44,407. State of Vermont saw a 12% increase during that same time period. and we saw the 15% increase. So we're 3 percentage points above the state of Vermont, which includes, of course, Chittenden County, which brings that average up significantly. One last point is we're also growing wealth. 2009, Windham County had $26 million personal tax returns. In 2013, we had 31 million, up 22%. So while there's a lot of other data out there, this is some data that does help point to some progress on our SeVEDS mission. So with that, I think I'll stop and happy to answer any questions.
Anybody on the board?
The 15% per capita or 12% increase across the state, can you break that down? I've been seeing like every couple of weeks or so, I get an update from, I think it's the Public Assets Organization, and they've tracked the same thing, and they're not, it's not like this. It's much more that it's gone up tiny little bits, like maybe 1% or not at all. And it may be that they're not looking at the whole picture, they're just looking at like middle-income people or something, but it's not, this isn't consistent with other data.
This is from the Vermont Department of Taxes, and perhaps the difference is that this is comparing 10 to 13. So it's over the 3-year span. It's not smaller. So if you looked at smaller pieces, it in fact
Year to
may
year would be less, you're
less.
Like monthly or
Right,
annual.
yeah, certainly.
Do you have any, you talked about in our binder, but also here again, about the successful regional paid internship program and the Six Colleges website and increasing student awareness about job opportunities. Do you have any data, like numbers or indicators of how successful that, or what the scope of that has been?
Sure. Right now, we've placed 55 interns in that program, and we maintain a 20% hire-on rate, which is significant. And we attribute that to the fact that the employers are bringing the intern in, and that intern is someone who's looking to better themselves. They're in college courses. They more often than not live locally, and most employers are grabbing talent when they see it at any opportunity. We also are finding that many employers are not necessarily posting available jobs, but if we go to them and say, hey, we just found this phenomenal person who's got some great finance background, are you looking? They go, yeah, we'll find a job. So it's really just, it's an opportunity to get talent in the door, and when the employers see that talent, they grab it.
So if folks in TV may not have the background, this is a program that, working with the 6 colleges locally, there's a person that coordinates to place interns with the colleges through SeVEDS program. Has been very successful at trying to make that connection, and that's growing as well. We're seeing some increase in the rate of placement and retention.
Yeah.
And then on the regional and middle high school programs, student awareness, what can you describe the programs, the 4 programs you're going to launch?
Sure. So Alex Beck is the person, our workforce and education specialist, who usually gives this part of the spiel. He was in Dover presenting tonight. So what it is there's 2 different programs, and the first one is for upperclassmen to reach those students who are already in the upper levels. The second one is to go a couple years lower and give just a broader career awareness. Alex doesn't like to use the term, but field trips. So literally it's getting on the bus and going and visiting all the different businesses in Windham region, so learning what opportunities there are, learning that at a precision manufacturer, there aren't just metal shards going in your eyes. It's actually computer operated equipment. It's not the manufacturing of old that the parents may recall. That in that same business, there's probably marketing, there's accounting, there's human resources. There are many different job opportunities within those businesses, and it's just making them aware of those opportunities. The second part for the upperclassmen, which will become the first will be a prerequisite for the second once the program's underway, will also work on specific skills that you need to take those careers that you became aware of through the first program. So the schools are excited about this. They see it as an opportunity. They also are finding ways within the schools to fit that into their existing schedule so that we don't need a new curriculum or a new space and time because the schools are so challenged already.
Have you worked at all with the, the state requires middle and high school students to have personal learning plans at this point. Have you coordinating with with the development of those?
Well, not the development of those, but certainly a huge part of the PLPs. So the graduating class of 2020, so today's 8th graders, will be the first class that has to graduate with a PLP. So this is taking education, completely turning on its head. So a student who's a freshman can say, I'd like to test out of algebra, and the teacher is teaching algebra, essentially has to say, okay, and provide that test. The student demonstrates proficiency in algebra. Now that teacher who was teaching algebra is teaching that student geometry, while the person sitting next to them is learning algebra, and the teacher has to allow that student to progress through. Part of that opportunity is to also ensure that children know the career opportunities, and that's part of the PLPs. So we're working with both the state. There's a lot of work going on throughout the Agency of Commerce, Community Development, various workforce programs that are trying to align all those efforts.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess my last question is on the chart of support, a lot of blanks. And I don't know what it means, it did not petition or no reps at TM, but do you anticipate that all the towns are going to give their $3 a person?
Well,
have they in the past? I'm not sure what I'm seeing.
So we have not, there is no point when we have gone to a town, petitioned, and been on their ballot and not received, and been present at town meeting and not received funding. There was 2 incidents where we did not have representatives show up and didn't speak, and you can imagine the crickets when something comes up at a town meeting and there's no one there to represent it.
So you need 27 people to go to all the town meetings.
Right. Correct. So what we've done, we've just completed our petitioning for many municipalities. I think we've collected north of 400 signatures and gone out in many communities, place us on those ballots without the petition. And many communities ask that we get those signatures for that article. So we're confident this year that we will have every community that we've either petitioned for or been placed on the article. We've already have people who will be at those town meetings and believe that the story can really inform and people will listen and support.
It's a lot of work.
Can I just follow up on that? And maybe.
I'm done.
Okay, well, this is a follow-up on the chart. What we're being asked for is money for this fiscal year and then FY17. But this chart doesn't have FY17 anywhere. So I'm wondering, are you, like, there's this, it's because we didn't give anything in FY15, right?
15, yes. 16, we're in 16.
Yeah.
And we're here tonight, my understanding is asking for the 16 funding.
Okay.
And then asking to be placed on the article for 17.
Okay.
I think it's a typo where it says FY16 requested support.
Oh, it's supposed to be
I think that's supposed to be
FY17.
FY17.
It's 16, 17.
But we didn't give 36 in FY15, did we?
No, I think what this shows is that we gave 25 and 13,
Right.
25 and 14,
Right.
36 and 15.
Oh, we did.
We didn't get a request in 16, and so we didn't
Okay.
fund it this past year, and we're being asked for 36 this coming year.
And so everybody else, like under the FY17, all these towns are being asked for this much. Is that
For
right?
$3 per capita,
Okay.
yes.
I was confused.
I think that SeVEDS has very helpfully and appropriately helped to focus us on the paradigm that economic development is a regional effort rather than a town-based effort. And I think that's been a very useful approach in looking at collaborative efforts to spur and support economic development in the region as a whole. I have significant concerns, however, about the burdens that arise from concentration of economic development within Brattleboro, which is the hub of regional economic activity for the region and the county, and about the way in which we as a town are being asked to support SeVEDS activities without looking at the impacts of the support that needs to be provided for economic activity as a whole. I think it's best reflected, the disproportionate burdens that we face, by looking at the municipal tax rates for various towns. Because if economic activity being concentrated here resulted in support for our economy as opposed to being a drag on the municipal tax rate, then we would have proportionate tax rate to other communities in the county and to other towns in the county. And that's absolutely not the case. I think that I read the same day or the next day in the newspaper that the SeVEDS projects were being announced by Ms. Sibilia, who was identified as a BDCC employee, not a SeVEDS employee, that Wilmington, I think you're familiar with it, you know, is struggling and intending to keep its tax rate at 50 cents on 100. Our tax rate is $1.16 on 100, and it's going to $1.20 on 100. Dover's tax rate is 35 cents on 100. Ours is $1.16 going to $1.20. I think that as a municipality, we wind up paying a very, very significant premium in order to support regional economic activity already. It's visible in many, many different ways. We provide support through municipal services for businesses here. We have a concentration of nonprofits and social services here, from which we don't recover any tax money, and we wind up paying, you know, extra money for those entities to be here in town. When you speak to the importance of healthcare and education development, that's great. I understand that those are growth areas, but we don't raise any tax revenue. And when we see the personal income tax figures here, the proxy that would allow us to raise money proportionate to having businesses based here in Brattleboro would be if we could have a small percentage of an income tax that would allow us to fund the services that have to be provided here in town, but we're not allowed to do that. In fact, other towns are able to raise revenue through, for example, local option sales tax. I understand Wilmington and Dover have those, but we're on the river, and so we can't raise those taxes, and so our real estate taxes are way, way high. I'm troubled by being asked to put in $3 a head for people in Brattleboro. I don't think it's an appropriate funding model. I really don't. One could look at the grand lists and try to allocate funding by grand list. We could look for other funding models that might be available. But I think that we're being asked to fund SeVEDS disproportionately to the burden we already face and to the burden that's imposed on us by inequitable state tax funding formula. And I'm certainly in favor of having a solid working relationship with SeVEDS, but I don't really see the rationale for the 18 and the 36 requests for funding at this point, and I can't support them in that form. I'm in favor of us working together, and I really think, quite frankly, that a focus of SeVEDS should be trying to get us towards a taxation policy that is fair and recognizes what the economic development patterns are in the county and the region, and the way in which they disproportionately burden the regional economic hub. I've been struggling to find a figure at which we could support SeVEDS at this point. and I haven't heard any alternate formulas that would work. But the 36 and the 18 are just too rich for me to support, given the way I see the regional economic overlay fitting across the dysfunctional municipal taxation structure. So I'm looking for ideas about how it should be properly funded, but $3 a head, given the current circumstances, just doesn't work for me.
If I could speak to a couple of those items, and I agree that the municipal burden as a regional center, it's something I've been thinking about for over 20 years as well, to try to understand why is that. In fact, the Regional Planning Commission, I think, started to do a study several years ago to try to identify what was happening with the burden that's placed on the regional growth center. And keep in mind that, Brattleboro is the regional center. It acts as the center for probably a shopping population of close to 60,000 people, with only 12,000 residents. And it has the infrastructure, the only community that has the significant, well, not the only, Fells Falls has infrastructure, Wilmington has some, but it really has the infrastructure to support economic activity, transportation, power, sewer, water. Those things are necessary to make commerce work. When I started, 20 some odd years ago in this town, when we did work in surrounding towns, mostly residential work, back then, we were asked to do municipal impact statements because the housing was going to create a burden to towns, the bedroom communities I'm speaking about. Sometime in the last 20 years, that changed. There's something that's happened in the economy where quite frankly, we have communities that now want us to go put housing in because you get more education funding with that, and people can't find, their populations are declining and their fixed cost is not. You have X amount of stuff that you've built for infrastructure. So I don't know the answer to the regional, tax burden and the regional center that falls here. But I do believe that spurring our economy as a region and in this community is going to help that burden and not increase the burden. We have a situation where because it's not robust, and I'd be curious to see what's happening in Chittenden County, the one county where in fact the economic activity is creating growth in grand list. And if you look at Cheshire County, which has been more successful than Windham County, their grand list has gone up year after year. They haven't had to keep increasing their taxes to carry that burden cost because they've seen economic activity. There is some point where these kinds of things will start to help. I want to go back to SeVEDS, the goals that we identified of putting what resources we have into finding jobs that increase the median wage. Those are people that live in this community that, if the median wage is going up, can afford to have higher standards of living. They can afford to pay for housing at a higher rate and pay for services. That should help increase the grand list. We are focusing on, again, businesses that have growth potential, that have the ability to, really to add additional jobs, which is going to be meaning adding real estate. A lot of that, most of that benefit is falling to Brattleboro. Those increases in value for housing, increases in value for buildings is not going to add to your road system, your sewer system, your water system, or your fire system. So you have a fixed cost game. Those are fixed costs that you're struggling with a flat line grand list. What these things should be doing is, because you already have residual capacity in those systems, is adding grand list over those fixed costs, and it should be helping your tax burden as you go forward. I mean, I don't know what the alternative is. If you don't work on that, does that mean we go into decline and you still have that fixed cost and value starts to decline? We haven't really declined. We just haven't increased consistent with inflation. And you guys see 2-3% increase just in insurance costs and wages that go up every year. And if the grand list is flatline, it means increased taxes every time you do this. I mean, I've watched this board and boards before this struggle with your budgets year after year after year, flatline, cutting. What do we cut on services? I don't know how long you can do that. You get to be like Detroit, where you start tearing up roads and cutting things in half. I don't know how you do that. I mean, we think we believe what we've been working on for years now is that, we'd like to have an economy that's more robust, an economy that, we can take care of properties and, have businesses that are successful and businesses that can pay rents that then increase value. And we didn't know how to do that. We're learning, and we bring outside people in. We have consultants that we've been able to raise money to pay to help us figure this out. We have federal agencies that we're probably closer to than any other area in the state. The EDA out of Philadelphia that's been guiding us, giving us advice. These are things that we've been learning over the last 9 years. And I'm optimistic, more optimistic now than I have been for years. I think we're seeing some progress, and I would only ask you guys to have faith that it will show a difference over time. And you are, as the leading community, you share the burden. You're also the leader to set the pace for the rest of the county. As we say, we're going to all the communities. We're asking for this, but honestly, I don't know what percentage of our time is spent working on issues in Brattleboro, but 80-90% of the businesses we work with, 80-90% of the efforts really do center around this community. So because you are the hub, and that's where the infrastructure is there to grow that region. It's here, and that's what we'd like to try to do.
Can I just ask a question or say something? I don't know if this is going to help or make it worse or more complicated. Because I think all of us need to work as a team to move this whole thing forward. Wyndham County forward, economic development. I spout off about it. These people have had to listen to me for 3 years. One of the things that I think we do that's not reflected in here, and again, I don't know if this can make it more complicated, what I'm about to say. We just put $200,000 into the GS Precision deal, and we also did tax stabilization on top of that. So, Putney is not having to, they didn't just put $200,000 into a new project in their community. So I don't know, I think in some ways our contribution isn't, there's more to our contribution than just, 36,000. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
it's sort of not our full contribution in some of what we do. And you guys had tax stabilization at the Brooks House, and there are other, you know what I mean? I'm trying to figure out how does what our contribution that we already make, how can that be reflected? And do you see what I'm trying to say? I don't know if that helps David.
We also provide administrative support through the work that town manager just did. Assistant town manager just provides invaluable support in making sure that grant applications meet necessary standards, but we don't get reimbursed for that at all. That's our tax dollars are paying for.
And that's what
If I could,
I'm trying to figure out how to.
And again, I think that these are sort of municipal tax burden kind of questions that when one studies that, you try to delve into that because hopefully with the investment in GS Precision, we've also increased the value of that building. So, the tax stabilization may be a reduction of the rate at which your benefit from that increases. You guys are partners in that. And you guys were partners in the Brooks House. And that value went from $2.5 to $6 million, an increase in value because of that contribution for the town. So in some ways, it's an investment that hopefully is coming back. And one would have to study all those aspects of that. The other thing that, again, is the town, this money, as I understand, and the $200,000 is coming out of the revolving loan fund, which is because of the economic activity in this town that had been, worked through the town to go after the grant funding. That's money that's paid back from the grant sources of CDBG. So for most of the communities on that list, that's actually falling to their taxes, whereas this is coming out of the revolving loan fund, which is a proceed from loans that have come through the federal government and the state and then funneled through the town. So again, purpose of those monies is to try to spur the economic activity of the town so that in a way things improve. They're not supposed to be zero-sum games. It's supposed to be things get better for the town, things get overall better for the citizens as well. Yeah, we are in, I think what you're seeing, what you're experiencing is an economic system that doesn't work. We know that it doesn't work. That's why we've been working on this. It's not a system that is functioning adequately across all the spectrum, including, your municipal government. All we're trying to do is build an infrastructure of better business environment, and it's a long-term game that we need sustainable funding sources, and we want to have these. We want to try to engage communities to work with us on this, which is the reason that we're asking all the communities to do that. We need to be there for the long term, and we do chase grants. A lot of the staff, a lot of the efforts we have are grant-based, and we're making good progress on that, but those grants will also run out. So,
If I might speak to a couple items, I think many of the communities we go out and meet with are smaller communities that are not going to contribute. So part of what we're also doing is just helping to get the information out there about the economy and making sure that everyone's using the same language and understands the fundamentals. So part of what was really enjoyable about going out and meeting with the municipalities is hearing all the different ideas about the economy, about how each town or municipality could engage in starting that dialogue. So, hearing comments tonight, I think really helps inform what we go back and think about and how we can come back and change and evolve. This is not a stagnant program. It must change. Each of these communities is asked for that $3 per capita. So for us, we just feel really on principle that to ask one community to pay less per capita on our current model would not be appropriate. So we really do ask that you consider for that full $3. It's not to say that we don't have to look at a new model going forward, but in those communities where the board doesn't wish to make that decision, they have directed us to go out and petition and bring that article to the town for the voters to have that say. And in this opportunity, I don't think in this circumstance, we don't have that opportunity because of the timing of tonight's meeting. So for us to find a different number than that 18 or 36 is we have no recourse, no solution.
Can I just ask a question? When it says funded for FY16, and it adds up to $32,962 without R18. Is that what you've gotten? Because you're asking us for it right now. Do you see what I mean? I'm trying to figure out, is this what you have for fiscal year the current fiscal year, which was last July 1st until this June 30th? See what I'm talking about? The 32.
Sure. In what document is there
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it says. Yeah. They've raised 36 for municipalities.
Right. It's this thing. I think you guys, it's this thing.
The table of who contributed what.
Do you see what I mean?
Do you have it? You can have it.
In a different format,
Yeah.
but yes.
Because I'm just trying to figure out between July 30th, 2000.
All right.
Oh, God.
Thank you.
Do you see what I mean? Between where it says funded for FY16 and the bottom it says 32,962.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean between July 1st, 2015 and right now you've raised 32?
Well, we're no longer raising for FY16, but yes, so what was raised for FY16
Was 32.
was 32.
So do you anticipate though that you'll get more than 32 next year?
Yes, we do. So last year, and you can see there was, again, through this transitional period of my coming into the organization, there was a lot of gaps in our efforts to go out and solicit the municipalities, one of them being the town of Brattleboro. So here we are almost a year later addressing FY16 with the town of Brattleboro. So like the town of Brattleboro, there was other municipalities that last year we were not successful in petitioning.
Because I think part of the problem is when you do the math, if it's really two towns, if we put in 18, I don't know, I think it's hard we're being asked to do a lot in 2016 based on what you've raised, and I don't know if this, I think it might be some of our same concern, is like how much of the burden, like, or is anybody else gonna fork it over? But Rockingham seems to be consistent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to figure out if it's ending up gonna be Brattleboro and Rockingham.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's sort of a,
Yeah. I mean, it is population-based, and those are
Right.
the two largest population centers, and also the two regional economic centers, too.
Right.
That's kind of why the burden sort of falls there.
right, but my concern is it just gonna be us?
For 2017,
Yeah.
we have successfully either petitioned or been placed on, for Marlborough, Vernon, Wilmington, Dover, Westminster, Rockingham, and Putney.
Wait,
So
come again, Marlboro?
Marlborough, Vernon, Wilmington, Dover, Westminster, Rockingham, and Putney. So if you add up your population base, those, you will quickly find that those are, of course, the larger towns.
He said Marlboro, right?
Vernon,
And like I
So
said
seven-
earlier,
7 of the towns.
7 of the towns where the population base is there to support the economic development and has economic development activity in those
yeah,
communities.
6.
We skipped Somerset, the $9 wasn't worth it.
Well, those
Yeah.
people don't even live there, they
You're
just own
right.
property.
No. No.
So it's Rockingham, Westminster, Putney, Vernon, Dover, and Marlborough.
Right, I mean,
Are we missing somebody?
no, it's, they've gotten on the ballot for $54,000 worth if they get the full allocation. We're being asked to put in 36, which is like 40% of the money.
We are, like other organizations that are funded on a per capita basis, it is strictly a per capita basis and does
Well-
not have, reflect the size of the community that's asked.
Well, we sort of fought off the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District trying to do it the same way, saying that it's not an equitable funding structure.
That per capita is not, you say?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's not an equitable funding structure, because we're already paying. I mean, we pay out of the economic development funds, quite a bit of money to do regional economic development already. Seems to me that, the money would be better spent studying the regional economic hub phenomenon and working to make fundamental changes in the state-based tax system, because getting more jobs and having more businesses focused here in Brattleboro only seems to raise our tax rate consistently.
I'm not sure that's where I would suggest putting the money if we didn't spend it here, but I think, we can talk about this for a long time. I think what I'd like us to consider is sending the second motion to town meeting and having this conversation all over again with everybody else. And I'm not sure what to do with the first one, because I just looked at we just got our halfway report, and I think we're a little bit over the middle in terms of our spending at this point. So, although we haven't heard from John yet, but, so I'm a little hesitant about an expenditure from this year's program income, but since you weren't here and things weren't functioning, it's like,
Yeah.
but I think the work you're doing is really important, and I think that we should be contributing. And we do all, as has been clearly pointed out, there are a whole bunch of ways we contribute
Yeah.
already.
Useful.
But I'm not sure that anybody, those contributions are not doing what you're doing in terms of workforce development and matching people with jobs and working with you, doing career development. And so I think it's worth it for us to pay this, to move these, and ask you to just keep coming back with more evidence.
Yeah.
That it's working.
Can I ask you another, I'm sorry, I'm dragging this out. Is there a plan, like if you only get, because you've done 6 towns, and then plus us, you're gonna be, what, I don't know, I can't do the math, it's too late, $90,000 short or something? Is there a plan to get up to that 139? Do you know what I mean?
Sure, well, the monies that we would raise will go to workforce development. We've been consistent with the appeal to the municipalities that that funding supports the workforce development. It is the one truly regional implication, and it's easy to identify that. So this budget is for our next fiscal year that we have not yet budgeted for. So if we have the funds, we can bring more services to that. If we don't, we won't be able to deliver on everything we hope to do.
Yeah, I've been on the board for a while, and I'm going to totally admit, I still can't follow SeVEDS as much as I should be able to, but because it is a little late, and I'm trying to absorb all this, and I don't know, I look like deer in heaven, because I'm looking at it and going, I don't know. So I'm going to be the first one to admit it. I don't know where we should end up. Donna?
Yeah, I want to weigh in. So,
No, I mean, please don't leave me hanging.
I'm not going to leave you hanging. I think you're doing really vital, important work.
I agree, yeah.
I think we all feel that way. I think what you're hearing is our age-old struggle, which you've acknowledged, and I think understand deeply how the burden falls on this town, and we are tasked with the responsibility of figuring out how to distribute, too little money to really valuable efforts to make things better. So that's a tight spot, and I know that you're both aware of that already. I really support the work you're doing. I hear about it from lots of different perspectives, and it's clear to me how it will take time for the town to understand the benefit of that visionary work and to feel any relief from it. But I also feel, having sat in this seat for almost 3 years, that it is that undue burden on this hub that makes it really challenging for us to get out of the hole that we're in. And I'm not sure what to do about this request. And I just want to be really clear, as I think everybody has, that it's not about not thinking that you're up to really important work.
Right.
And if I could, and I don't know, we haven't taken on the, doing a real growth center study in depth is a fair amount of effort. And that's kind of the questions that we're hearing tonight. It's like, how do we solve this issue of us being the center, which seems to be increasing to our tax burden? But I do think that, we've gotten some feedback, and we do work with some national economic experts that at least we can start to ask some of these questions about, so given the status of where we are today, with the higher tax burden here, with the infrastructure here, how does this work in terms of seeing relief come to the town of Brattleboro as a regional center, at least qualitatively, to figure that out? Because I think, I sort of feel like what I'd like to say is that really this is an investment to start to solve that problem for you, but I don't have anything to back that up. I just have my sense that this is the right direction to move to try to see an improvement in the problem that we have in this town. But it would certainly be nice to have more data to be able to say that with more authority, and then you wouldn't feel as guilty. Perhaps the decision next year would be easier to say, okay, we can understand how if we spend this, we're going to see this, this come back to us as a benefit in reducing tax burden to the taxpayers here. My gut tells me that if the economy continues to flatline or declines, it's only going to make it harder. So I feel like we're doing the right thing. I just don't have the statistics to say, what do we need to do to move the needle for the tax rate here?
Understood.
It wasn't something, a question that we've identified to work on.
That's good.
Came up with an answer yet, Kate?
No, I'm thinking.
I've raised the issue with the consultant, and the consultant's position is that the tax structure puts the burden on us, and that in order to avoid that undue burden, the tax structure needs to be different, and there needs to be real
regional government if regional economic activity is going to be spurred. And that's what you see at Chittenden, and that's why I don't think it's an appropriate comparison to Wyndham County, because there's county government there.
County government in Chittenden County?
Yeah, and collaborative effort between those towns, which doesn't exist here. I don't think you can compare Cheshire to Wyndham County either, because the tax structures are totally different.
Yeah, tax structures.
I mean, the tax structure is not.
But maybe there's a sorry, yeah.
No, it's not. It's just not. It doesn't take account of the current settlement patterns and economic patterns in the community, and it unduly burdens us.
Given the status quo, though, the question I would ask is, if our economy improves, is that going, if these efforts mean that we have higher paying, better paying wages and more investment in capital in this town, is that going to add to the tax burden or reduce the tax burden? It's a simple question.
The answer's not clear to me at this point.
Yeah.
I don't see that the economic growth brings down our tax rate.
Yeah.
I think that the additions to the grand list are on the margins, and we wind up having to provide significant tax incentives to businesses that come into town. It happened at Commonwealth. It happened at the rebuilding of the Brooks House. It happened with GS Precision, and I think that our real estate taxpayers are left holding the bag. Which doesn't get back to the ultimate question of how we should fund this.
I have a headache.
Come on, John, it's still early. Have a headache? John O'Connor hasn't given his report yet.
I was up at 5:30.
You know?
Oh, I can't wait for that one.
If you want to make the motion.
Yeah, I think
you
what
go
I'd like
ahead
to
and
do
we'll
is,
see.
we've been making so many decisions tonight, why don't we try for another one? On motion number 2, to place an article on the warning, I move to place an article on the warning for the 2016 Representative Town Meeting, asking that body to authorize the expenditure of $36,138 from program income as an FY17 contribution to the operation of SeVEDS.
You know, I'd probably vote in favor of 20 or 25. The 36 is just troubling to me.
Would you go for a friendly amendment?
Anything.
A friendly amendment is a really good idea at this particular juncture.
Well, I mean, if David's saying he'd go for either 20 or 25, maybe that's what we need to. That way,
Friendly amendment to 25.
this is up to David.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna accept it because it's friendly. But there's not any reason for it except that it's less.
That's correct.
You know, and I think that maybe that's reason enough. It recognizes all the things that we do anyway.
Well, it recognizes a concern, you know, so, and that's,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't know if you can put an exact figure on that, but it's,
But then we can maybe
So did you
figure
change
out,
it to 25, please, Jan?
and then maybe between now and next year,
Right.
we can figure something out.
We have a motion to approve $25,000 article on the town meeting warning
Then what happens to
for
the 18?
funding for SeVEDS from program income. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0.
What happens to motion 1?
That hasn't been decided yet.
Okay.
Well, that's coming out of current money, so I'm a little bit hesitant about that. And we don't know what we're gonna have for leftovers or what we're gonna have overruns. We haven't used up all our salt yet, but
No,
It's
that's
coming out of
program-
the
coming
program
out of
income.
Program income.
Coming out of program.
And not from the general fund.
okay.
I would go. Move that we give $12,500 from program income for an FY16 allocation to SeVEDS.
Did you say 12.5?
12.5. Have it
half of
25.
25.
Oh.
Good math.
That was quick.
Is there any further discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. See you.
Well, thank you for supporting us.
Thank
And,
you.
We'll keep working and trying to answer some of those questions
Thank you.
for next year, and thanks for giving us the time.
All right, thanks
Good
for
conversation.
taking it Sorry to keep you up so late.
You guys are, sorry you're still here.
Next item on the agenda is pay-as-you-throw update.
Good evening,
Hi, Patrick.
Mr. Chairman. As you can see, I'm here alone this evening, and the Pay-As-You-Throw Committee was unable to join me. I knew that several of the members wouldn't be with us. I had an email earlier today that one had dropped out, and one actually started the meeting with us and unfortunately had to leave at the intermission. So I think I'll take it from here, and I'll try and keep this as brief as possible. The Pay-As-You-Throw Committee met on January 7th. It was their first meeting since April 15th. And back at that April meeting, we had all agreed that after 6 months operation, following the transition to Pay-As-You-Throw, we'd take a look at the results and we'd come meet with the select board. And so that was the genesis behind this evening's presentation. So there's just a couple of points. I think you're basically familiar with them already from having looked at the implications of the transition, but I'll rush through those just briefly, and there's a couple of action items that I'd like to draw your attention to. But firstly, I would point out the changes to our waste stream. Now, we've gone over these changes previously after 4 months and after 5 months. What I will say this evening, which is probably new information, the only real new information, is that it's very clear from 6 months of data that we have reached a new normal. As you can see from one of the pages in the packet here, that the percentages for rubbish, cans and bottles, paper, and compost are all very, very static. After 4 months, after 5 months, and after 6 months. So what's clear is that the changes to our waste stream have taken hold, that they're significant, and that they're very stable.
I don't know. Do we know if the compost quality is the same as before the pay-as-you-throw transition?
I had just that conversation with Bob Spencer, who of course is the director for Wyndham Solid Waste Management, and he was really concerned ahead of time that the increase in the supply of compost would be including perhaps not such good quality, and that just hasn't materialized. The quality of the product being delivered to the waste district today is as good as it was when it was a much smaller program, which is, I think, a real testament to the commitment with which Brattleboro citizens have elected to participate with that program. They put their heart and soul into it. The results are impressive, and a solid and growing supply of quality compostable materials is being delivered to the district on a weekly basis.
Thank you.
Sure. Also in the packet that was put together here, I collected a memorandum from Brattleboro Police Captain Mark Kerrigan talking about the instances of illegal dumping. Now, I'll just briefly note that Captain Kerrigan's memo does indicate an increase, what appears to be a significant percentage increase in the number of instances of illegal dumping since Pay-As-You-Throw, but we're only really talking about 23 total instances, of which some of them are pretty clearly not related to Pay-As-You-Throw, but are rather just instances of illegal dumping that might otherwise have taken place. And I'd like to point out that Captain Kerrigan also notes that the present instances of illegal dumping are not overly taxing to the department. Any questions on the dumping? No. Okay. Well, then we'll move on to some of the action items.
If you want me to ask a question, I will.
No. I think what I'm getting is clear direction to keep us going.
We're on track for 10:15, you know?
Hurry up.
Yep. So, the first action item that I'd like to solicit some real genuine action from the board, or feedback from the board, if nothing else. In my memo, it notes that for many, many years, the town has had a practice of underwriting the cost of the bins or the buckets that go along with either the recycling or the compost program. For example, the recycling buckets that are the big green rectangular buckets that you see on the side of the road, when somebody is a first-time customer, we provide that bucket to them at no charge. Every subsequent bucket, we charge them $9, okay? What's nice about the $9 is it's actually fairly close to the actual cost of purchasing that bucket. That's not really the case with the compost buckets. Those actually cost the town about $18 per compost bucket. However, we sell them for $10. So the town of Brattleboro has, for a good long time, been subsidizing the cost of these pieces of equipment for the participating households. Now, it would be my recommendation that we transition as quickly as possible to a system where the town maintains a supply of these items, but that we sell them to interested customers for the cost that they actually cost us. So if it's an $18 bucket, we sell them for 18. If we end up getting them for 20 in a couple of years, we sell them for 20. That would be my recommendation. Now, I took that matter up with the Pay As You Throw committee, and they actually put a little bit of a spin on this, and I agreed to go ahead and bring that forward to the board tonight, which is that we ask the board to direct us to begin this paying the actual cost of these items after August 1st of this year. And the reason for the delay stems from the anticipated increase in curbside compost participation that will arise from a transition to every other week trash collection. The every other week trash collection will very likely have as significant an increase on the compost program as the Pay As You Throw program did. So the recommendation would be to continue the subsidy practice as we've been performing it over the last years, but to end that practice by August 1st of this year.
And advertise that they've got 1 month more to go before they have to pay the...
Absolutely. That would be part of the public education campaign, that up until such and such a date.
July 1st, beginning of the garbage.
No. But people, I just want to stress this to people out in TV land who are probably freaking out right now. You don't have to use the town-approved bucket. Like, you know what I mean? You don't have to use the one that the town provides. You can have your own thing with a lid on it. You can use your own recycling bin thing, however you want to do it. So we're not requiring people to come here and spend $18 on a compost container, because they can go to a store, an independently owned store here in Brattleboro, and buy something for $5, and it's still, if it has a top on it.
If it's got a tight-fitting lid and it's clearly marked, it will suffice.
Right. I just want to make sure that you know what I mean. People get that, so no one's freaking out that we're making them do $18 when they don't have to.
But that town-sponsored bucket, that's high-quality material.
And it's got the ski jump.
It's just great.
It's got wheels.
Well, it's a pretty nice bucket.
It's a good bucket.
It is.
And it's got a nice
And
little
we're ready for
jumper
motion.
guy on there.
It's getting late now.
Ready for 3 motions.
We're ready for motion.
All right, let's move it. Okay.
They're even
Here we
giddy
go.
in the audience.
To direct the town manager to maintain the practice of supplying recycling and composting bins and buckets, and to transition sales of these items to market pricing beginning August 1st, 2016.
Is there any further discussion?
Just one quick question, and I'm sorry about this, because I haven't asked anything for a while. How many do we sell a week or a month, roughly? Do you know? I mean, is it like 5 or?
In the last year, we've sold, is it all right if I answer in that format?
Yes.
In the last year, we have sold, let's see, the first tranche of buckets was, I think, 380. We then sold through those really quickly, bought another 380.
In 1 year?
Oh, yeah.
Remember last year I bought
The transition to Pay As You Throw was, it doubled the program. We added more than 1,000 households.
Okay.
And there's probably another 2,000 that have not fully adopted the program or are participating and we're not aware of it. And we anticipate that a large chunk of those households will now
Okay, that's under recycling
really
buckets.
should adopt participation. in
That's
this.
the recycling. Now, how about the compost?
No, that's compost.
Oh, that's compost.
That's compost.
I bought one, John.
There's another couple of thousand
I'm
households
impressed.
that really need to make this transition.
Wow.
And we'll see what happens, but as we transition to every other week
Yep.
trash collection, there's gonna be real added incentive to
Oh,
get that
absolutely.
material out of the waste stream.
I just didn't think there were that many sold.
Get that bucket.
Wow.
I love my bucket.
Mic him up.
That's really good. All right, so the next issue is whether we want to extend the Waste Zero contract. John's memo says that.
We have to vote on that.
We
one.
got a motion.
All right,
We have to vote on motion
all
one.
those in favor of
The motion.
the motion to make buckets available till August 1, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody abstaining or opposed? Carries 5-0. John says that Waste Zero is an excellent vendor. We're ready for a motion.
Wait, can I just, a quick, I'm sorry, this is gonna be a quick question. It says the price of the bags are gonna go up at a rate of 1.6% per year over 5 years. Are we gonna increase the price of the bag for people buying the bag?
No, that's completely up to the select board to
Okay.
address that at any time. And we should note the 1.6 is an averaged annual impact,
Right.
so it's actually two separate 4% increases at the off years.
Okay, so people don't have to freak out.
Right.
Okay, do you want me to make a motion?
Yeah.
I move that
Yes, please.
I move that we direct the town manager to execute a contract extension with Waste Zero for continuation of pay-as-you-throw bag, fabrication, and inventory distribution services as presented.
Why is the price going up?
Cost of oil to make the plastic bags.
Why is the price going up?
Boy, if
Well,
I had asked that, I'd got yelled at.
We've just finished a round of negotiations with Waste Zero on just that issue. And if Steve Lasauskas was here, I'm sure what he would say is that they routinely undergo increases in shipping costs, in resin fabrication costs, and in, I think it was shipping and resin.
And actually, Patrick did a very nice job in the course of those negotiations. The figure that had been provided to us in last year's documentation was 7% increases. And I don't know to what degree that was a serious number as opposed to a number relevant to some other market or something. But we knew 7 was completely out of the question. We weren't sure exactly where the fair figure was, and there was quite a lot of back and forth, but it was respectful and productive, and it ended up at an average annual increase of 1.6, which we thought was fair.
I like the annual increase in the garbage collection contract.
True.
All right?
And everything else.
Yep.
All in
Are
favor?
we ready for a vote on extending the contract with Waste Zero?
We are.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. And then,
I move that we dissolve,
Read you.
I move to dissolve the Pay-As-You-Throw Advisory Committee Working Group effective immediately, and to thank Jane Southworth, Moss Kaler, Carl Hirth, Peter Gaskell, and Bob Spencer for their service. And we should probably thank Patrick as well for his service. Okay, never mind.
to the motion. All
Friendly
right.
amendment? Friendly amendment? No, I'm just.
We have a motion to dissolve the Pay-As-You-Throw Committee and to thank its members. Any discussion? No. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, Patrick.
John, I'm telling you, you better have a really important, interesting, I'll tell you right now, at 10 o'clock.
Next item is financial report.
This better be wonderful.
Thanks, David. We'll make it great for you. John.
Okay.
So included in your packet is the December financial report. And through December, we're halfway through the fiscal year. And after making the prorations that we make for insurance payments, human service payments, lease and bond payments, the general fund expenditures stood at 47.2. So under the targeted 50%. Utilities fund expenditures were at 53.1, and parking was at 42.5%. adjusting the utilities fund for their interest payments, prorating those interest payments, brings down the expenditures to 49.1%. So basically, just about on budget. Solid waste. This is the December report, although it doesn't include the December bag revenues and collection costs and tipping fees. But the revenue stood at 51.3, and expenditures were 46.1% of their annual budgets. The loan report shows that we had $4,161,502 in outstanding loans. 2 of the loans had payments that were overdue, and we still had 2 loans that were in default and fully reserved. And program income has gone up to $382,134, and that's what's available for future grants and loans. And then finally, the grant report shows that we have 42 active grants and 4 grants in the application process. So again, active grant program. Is that okay?
Applications coming in, great.
About how much money do we take in monthly on the program income? Is it steady?
Pretty steady. My recollection is it's around $10,000.
So we authorized 12.5 today for SeVEDS, and we got 25 on the warning.
Yeah.
That's like a monthly figure.
4 months.
Any questions for John? Any comments? Thank you, John,
Okay.
for waiting so long.
Thanks, John. We wish we could have Skyped you in.
Next item
All right.
is
Oh, good, Rod.
annual status report on implementation of the town plan.
I think it's still good evening.
Hi.
I'm Rod Francis, I'm the planning director. You have in your packet a memo from me concerning the requirement laid out in the town charter that the select board report to town meeting, representative town meeting, annually in writing on the town's progress towards accomplishing the goals set out in the duly adopted town plan. So the first thing to note is that in fact the town plan itself was amended earlier this year in June. And the memo before you describes the structure of the town plan that you are now familiar with and identifies 58 separate policies and 160 actions, and points to a matrix chapter which identifies each one of the policies and actions required and identifies the budgetary impact, the source of funds, the staff that would be assigned, and the appointed or elected body that would oversee it. And so following that, you have in its current format, in a font, in a typeface that's way too big for the report, about a page and a third, which will come down to at least maybe just a page, that will provide representative town meeting members a summary of progress towards accomplishing the goals of the town plan.
As I read through the report, I wondered how we, whether we as a select board should be looking at the town plan's goals and action items in developing our goals for the coming year. And I'm wondering whether you go through from time to time and look at the town plan to think about whether there are actions that we should be focusing on as a select board, what other departments might focus on, or whether you just use it for goals of the planning department.
I'm aware of each one of those 3 things. So we use it probably more than most. And this year we've achieved the land use regulations, which was a primary focus of the town plan. But I would say that there are specific policies and actions that have been identified for the select board to pursue, sometimes solo and sometimes in conjunction with appointed boards or staff on particular issues, and that other departments also figure strongly under certain sections, and it's pretty obvious. So, ironically or not, Public Works turns up as being responsible for transportation projects. So, it could be useful as a planning tool on the annual basis for the select board and staff to even reacquaint themselves with the goals and actions of the town plan, and then see what progress is being made and how those things will be ranked in the coming year's workload. For us, we're already aware that some things are not going to happen and have changed, and that's also normal and to be expected. And so it's just a good time to check in, I think, and see whether those goals and actions that were identified at the beginning of now 2012 really are still valid. And so it doesn't take very long, and I think it's a useful exercise. And if the select board wants to do that as part of your goal setting, I'm happy to facilitate some part of that.
That might be nice in the next 2 or 3 months without adding too much burden on you. If you can summarize for us where we stand and where we might think about going, that might be useful as we work towards our goals in March and April and May. Please. Thank you.
Okay. I'm happy to do that.
Any other questions about the progress towards the goals? Pretty impressive.
I think it was a pretty good list, wasn't it?
It was.
But what
Particularly the
about the other
land use
100?
regulations.
I know.
What about the other
It's the first thing in
150?
my select board report. The land use regulations.
Yeah.
I move to approve the select board's progress report on the town plan implementation as presented.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting or approving the select board's progress report? Town plan, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, Rob.
I feel we should have more questions for you, Rob, because
No,
you
it's
stayed
you know
so
what?
late.
You should come early.
I'm happy for you to send them as an email.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, do you want? Did you address that agenda item that's on next? Or are you just going to shift?
I mean, stay in the room for the 45 seconds it'll take us to address it, in case anybody has
I'll
a
just walk
question.
very slow.
But I'll address it if I may.
So the next item on the agenda is the need for stormwater permit for Living Memorial Park, because we're thinking about putting a skate park there.
And so, you know from the memorandum that Carol Lalott wrote that's in your backup, that we got a bad surprise just about a week ago, right on the eve of publishing the backup materials for this meeting, that it was suggested that a Living Memorial Park wide stormwater management permit would be required in order for the skate park and the dog park to proceed, and that would have been quite an expensive undertaking, and felt like it was far more than could possibly really be necessary to protect the public interest when we're having an impact of a few thousand square feet up near the top of the park. And so the good news is this evening that Rod and Carol each have done different pieces of staff work since we put this in here as just a placeholder, just to flag this issue so we could address it with you tonight if we had to. The reason we hurried so much to do it in such a half-baked manner was so that we'd be in position to put something on for town meeting if you needed to put an article on that would request additional funding for the skate park from town meeting. It turns out actually that we've been able to work it out that some additional work is going to be required, but only as it relates to the area of disturbance for the two parks. And so the broader implications for all of Living Memorial Park are now gone, and we are happy to withdraw the item from your consideration.
Great. Excellent. Good work. Thank you.
It was tricky, but good.
Okay. All right, so the next item on the agenda is the Transportation Center stairs. And if there were press here, the particular lesson to be learned is that when cutting costs and making changes to a project, one has to take a long-term view.
I'm bringing up the fire station.
Because we turned the staircase on the inside of on the east side of the parking garage from an interior to an exterior staircase, but left them as interior
quality stairs. And now they're deteriorating rapidly, and we have to pay $200,000 to replace the entire staircase. When if we had built it right in the first place, probably that wouldn't have happened.
Interesting.
That is exactly staff's presentation on this matter.
This is very
So we
lectury.
recommend you approve the award of the contract.
I'll tell you, if it wasn't 5 after 10, you'd be hearing from me on this one.
I'm hearing from you already.
All right,
Donna's got it.
I've got it. To award a bid to Wright Construction of Mount Holly, Vermont, in the amount of $188,103 for replacement of the eastern stairwell at the Brattleboro Transportation Center. To authorize the town manager to execute a contract with Wright Construction for this project, and to approve a total project budget not to exceed $204,703.
Wow. And this money is coming from the parking fund.
That's correct.
So all the money was set aside for capital projects in the parking fund this year, right?
That's also
That is correct.
Oops.
Now it's gone.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next matter on the agenda, or maybe that's why Bob's still here.
Good
To
eye.
approve a one-year extension of Bob Fisher's contract,
I'm going to argue this one.
including a 1% increase in applicable fees. Well, he'll hear it at town meeting.
Comes out to about $3.50 an
That's
hour if you
true.
count town meetings, you count these meetings.
All right, so the board has requested to approve the contract with Fisher and Fisher for the next year. The amount of $102,010.
I move to approve a contract with Fisher and Fisher Law Offices, P.C., for a one-year term in the amount of $102,010.
Is there any discussion?
Did anyone ask you if you want the job?
Happy to do it.
Excellent, that's my question.
John's awake with that.
Oh, no.
Not rounding down by the $10.
No, I was going to go for a friendly amendment, but
You were gonna round up, but that's all
no,
right.
I'm going to round down.
All those in favor of approving the contract with Fisher and Fisher for the coming year, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. And then for annual appointments, I move to appoint Fisher and Fisher Law Offices as town attorney for the period ending March 25, 2017. To appoint John O'Connor as town treasurer for the period ending March 25, 2017. And to appoint Annette Cappy as town clerk for the period ending March 25, 2017. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are we opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. We authorized the formation of a design review committee as part of the new review process under the new zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations. And we've got 2 applications. How many members is the committee supposed to be? 3? 3. So we've got the first 2 people. And that would constitute a quorum.
Doing okay.
Do we have nominations?
Barbara George.
We have 1 nomination. Do we have another nomination?
Robin Renzoni, Sweet Apple?
Do we have any further nominations? Nominations are closed. All those in favor of appointing Barbara George and Robin Sweetapple as members of the Design Review Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Are we opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0.
He's going for the 10:15 deadline.
Gonna make it.
So our March 1 meeting is the first meeting in March, Tuesday. It's town meeting day, but we've been told that it's a very bad day.
Bad day.
To hold a meeting in the municipal center or anywhere else. So because BCTV can't give us the room, and this room is being used for elections, you know, we've been in we've done executive session in the emergency operations room upstairs, or the, whatever it is, the VY room upstairs, but that's not a good place
Oh, yeah.
to have a public meeting. So we need to move it either to Wednesday, March 2nd, or the next Tuesday, March 8th. Anybody have a preference?
I can't make the 2nd,
No, March 1st is.
so my preference is the 8th.
All right? Everybody comfortable with March 8th, second Tuesday, and then third Tuesday in March? We're also going to have informational meetings. So there's going to be extra meetings in there, sorry.
Of course.
All right, so I move to reschedule the regular first March meeting of 2016 from March 1 to March 8. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. And then our organizational meeting could happen anytime after March 21.
No.
March 21, after March 20.
Well,
That was after
yes,
March
the
30th.
the elected members will be sworn in on or after March 21st.
Right, and so we can have our organizational meeting anytime after March 21. But I'm not available for our organizational meeting from the 21st to the 28th. So if I happen to get reelected, I can't be there.
Well, we don't have meetings scheduled anyway.
Right, so we can do it on the 30th or 31st of March?
Yeah.
Where will you be?
And
Somewhere else.
She's gonna come and
I will
testify.
not be doing that.
may I add for quick context at 11 minutes after 10, that the game plan would be to swear in the other two who are elected so that there would be 4 select board members during the period of time between the 21st and whenever you hold the organizational meeting in case there is an emergency and the board needs to meet. But the first public gathering of the new board and the reorganization meeting would be on the date you're about to pick.
And of course, this is all contingent on who gets elected.
It's true.
Yeah.
Because we could have a flurry of petitions. and
Flurry.
all incumbent members could be swept out of office.
I'll be here.
Well, all right, so 30th is okay? That's Wednesday?
Wednesday, 30th.
And it doesn't take very long, right?
No, very quick. All right, so I move to schedule our organizational meeting, or the Brattleboro Select Board's organizational meeting for March 30, 2016. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Is there any further business to come in front of the meeting?
What time that day?
It'll get set after.
Okay, I was.
Evening.
When we'll know who's elected, right, when we know who's elected.
Oh, by the way,
If anybody.
so moved.
Are you so moved
No
by the motion?
no further business. Motion to adjourn. All right, we have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody who watched on TV. Thank you, members of the press. Thank you, BCTV operators. Thank you, ASL interpreters. Thank you, staff members, for staying so long. Good evening.